If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon, link is in the description.
Chapter 41, Ginny lost the diary. After a while, he heard the two best friends, Harry and Ron, communicating outside. Then, they knocked on the door of the compartment where Cyrus and Hermione were respectively. "Hurry up, we have to go." A sharp voice answered him. I really don't want to come out." "You can go on your own." "Hermione, we know Millicent is ugly, and no one will know it's you." "No, really no, I don't think I can come." "You two hurry up, you are wasting your time." Harry looked at Ron with a confused expression that looked more like Goyle's. "Well, at least we still have Ginny, Malfoy." Ron's final voice was still stuck in his throat, and he saw a figure that almost scared him to death. "Why is Draco Malfoy here? Plan exposed already?" Ron thought, making a grim expression. However, Harry soon discovered that the Malfoy in front of him was wearing a Gryffindor school uniform. "Are you Ginny?" Cyrus nodded. At this moment, Ron also reacted. He looked at Ginny with a ridiculous face. He couldn't believe that Ginny, who had been very reliable since the beginning of school until now, actually fell off the chain. "But how can you stand up to it? From all those other Slytherins you settled for Malfoy's face." "You're right, that's why I can't go." Cyrus pretended to be helpless with Malfoy's face, which made Harry want to punch him twice. "Yeah, just hide that face like Hermione, and ugh, don't make that kind of expression," Ron said. "Sorry Ginny, you look really annoying," Harry commented. "Thank you, you look stupid too, the time is almost up. The potion prepared by Hermione will not be effective for a long time. You guys must hurry up." Cyrus rolled his eyes and said immediately. After sending the two guys away, Cyrus said, "Hermione, wait for me here. I think I can use Malfoy's appearance to go somewhere else to get some information." "Okay, go ahead." Hermione wished Ginny would leave quickly. Cyrus didn't intend to change his clothes. With a touch of the wand, his robe turned green. Then, he walked out quickly and headed towards the owl loft without hesitation. He took out the map. "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." Many traces immediately appeared on the blank parchment. Dumbledore is in the headmaster's office, and the other professors are also in their respective offices. There is someone in the owl shed. Malfoy? Why is he in the owl shed? Very good, let's leave. Cyrus was startled, but he found that Malfoy did not stay there for long and left immediately. He immediately cast a disillusionment charm on himself and walked towards the path where Malfoy went downstairs. Malfoy lowered his head and read a letter while walking. It was probably a gift sent to him by Narcissa or Lucius. Usually, these would be sent directly to his dormitory by the house elves, but it may be due to the recent situation in the Malfoy family. More special, Arthur Weasley is trying to deal with them. After reading the letter, he opened another newspaper, and Malfoy's face immediately became happy. Cyrus glanced over and noticed that it was reporting that Ron and Harry had driven to school, for which Arthur Weasley had been punished. Apparently, Lucius was putting a little pressure on this too so that Mr. Weasley didn't have the energy to cause trouble for him. After missing out on Malfoy, Cyrus continued walking upstairs and soon reached the tower. There are very few owls in the tower, almost all of them are public owls raised by the school. Cyrus took out the letter he had prepared in advance, found Draco Malfoy's owl, and released it. The owl did not realize that the man in front of him was not its real owner. Seeing the owl spreading its wings in the snow, Cyrus couldn't help but curl up his lips. "Now, it's time to kick Dumbledore out of Hogwarts. Did you find out the secret?" Cyrus met Harry and Ron at the door of the bathroom. The two of them had almost completely transformed back. Their large robes made them look very funny. "Malfoy is not the heir. So our work was in vain?" Cyrus asked. "Fortunately, it's not a complete waste of time," Ron gasped, turning around and closing the bathroom door. "I know we still haven't figured out who launched these attacks, but I'm going to write to Dad tomorrow and ask him to go and search under the Malfoy living room." Ron knocked hard on the door of Hermione's room. "Hermione, come out, we have a lot to tell you." "Go away." Hermione piped up. "What happened?" Ron said, "You must have returned to normal now, Weeping Myrtle suddenly appeared from the crack in the door of the single room. She looked very happy as if she had met some huge happy event. "Oh, wait and see," Myrtle said, "it's terrible." They heard the door lock slide open and Hermione emerged, sobbing, her face covered in black hair, her eyes turned yellow, and 2 long pointed ears sticking out of her hair. I made a mistake, that was a piece of cat hair. She cried miserably, Millicent must have a cat. But this potion is not used to transform into animals. So I became like this. What bad luck, said Ron. But the corners of his mouth were raised as if he had awakened some strange XP. You'll be teased to no end, Myrtle said happily. It's okay, Hermione. Cyrus also felt that Hermione looked very cute like this. There were not many Furies alive, but seeing that Hermione was so sad, he still gave an opinion, we will send you to the infirmary. Madame Pomfrey never asks. It took them a while to persuade Hermione to leave the bathroom. Moaning Myrtle laughed gleefully and loudly, causing them to quicken their pace. Just wait, everyone will find out that you have a tail. Don't worry Hermione, there are too many precedents like you. It can be cured, pfft. As long as you are not handed over to Lockhart. Cyrus said, almost making Ron laugh. After sending Hermione to the school hospital, Cyrus planned to return her body to Ginny first. During this period of intense possession, Ginny's physical condition became a bit worse. It would be best to let her go during the Christmas holiday and get some peace of mind. Cyrus picked a few things to tell Ginny so that she wouldn't reveal them. So, Malfoy is not the heir, and our clues are broken again. Ginny summarized the progress of Mr. Riddle during this period. It can be said that her work was almost in vain. It's not all in vain. At least Ron discovered some flaws in the Malfoy family, and I discovered that your brother Percy was in an embarrassing posture with the prefect of Ravenclaw in the girls' bathroom. So, don't worry, I believe things will get better. Cyrus comforted her. However, the accident still happened. When the Christmas holiday was over, Cyrus suddenly found that he could no longer contact Ginny. Chapter 42, Secrets that have been told. Is this what my father said, the thing that can help me open the secret room? Draco picked up the diary and read it from different angles, but didn't find anything strange about it. Anne. This diary looks like something from the Muggle world. This made Draco Malfoy feel a little disgusted, and he even felt that he could no longer keep the 2 fingers holding the corner of the book. However, in order to become the heir of Slytherin, Malfoy was still determined to endure this dirty and stench, but in the end, he didn't even know how to use the diary. Reveal yourself quickly. The diary didn't change at all. What the hell, Dad asked me to be more respectful to the owner of the diary. He opened the cover and looked at the only handwriting on the cover with disdain, TM. Riddle. As soon as he heard it, he knew he was not a pure-blood wizard. I just hope he's at least a half-blood, if it's another mudblood then I can't stand it. The thought of Hermione Granger made him sick. Let's write something. He spread the diary on the table, picked up a very expensive-looking quill, dipped some ink, and wrote in the diary. Show me your secret. Ginny, what secret do you have? The 4 Weasley brothers surrounded Ginny and Harry, and Hermione also blocked Ginny's retreat. After this morning's classes ended, someone found out that Ginny's dormitory had been robbed. The thief was probably looking for something and turned her room into a mess. After Ginny came back, she kept rummaging through the mess and repeated in despair, it's gone. They all wanted to know what it was that Ginny and the thief valued so much. Except for the twins. The 2 of them were very nervous now. What was important to Ginny? The Marauder's map. Fred and George looked at each other with unpleasant expressions on their faces. Fred asked heartbrokenly, is it really lost? Ginny just nodded mechanically. What on earth are you talking about? Ron and Percy were a little annoyed by these secret inner circle talks. But obviously, neither Ginny nor the Geminis could tell their own secrets. So they can only speak vaguely. It's the only hope for catching the heir. George sighed and said, without it, maybe we really can't find the culprit. This actually made Ginny look at the 2 of them strangely. Do George and Fred know about Mr. Riddle? Cyrus had never told Ginny about the Marauder's map. At this time, Ginny thought the twins were talking about Riddle's diary. In her opinion, Mr. Riddle must have some clues, so it was stolen by the heir of Slytherin. From this perspective, it is very reasonable to describe the diary as the hope of catching the murderer. In this case, we should tell the professors about this. Hermione and Percy both agreed that the professors should catch the thief. But this proposal was immediately opposed by 3 people. No. X3. Ginny, Fred, and George immediately shook their heads. Fred and George thought, if the Marauder's map falls into the hands of professors, will those students who attempt to violate discipline have a future? While Ginny thought, if the diary falls into the hands of the professors, will there be a future for me and Mr. Riddle? Absolutely not. X3. What are you three hiding from me? Percy frowned. He suspected that the twins were messing around with Ginny. Maybe what was stolen was not something important at all, but something they planned to use as a prop for their pranks. I advise you not to lead Ginny astray, otherwise I will tell Mother. No, Ginny's reaction was even bigger than that of the twins. Her mother always felt very sorry for her. If her mother found out about this, there would definitely be a big fuss. In that case, Mr. Riddle will. Percy must be stopped. She remembered what Cyrus told her about Percy's little secret, so she immediately threatened. You can't tell anyone, Percy. Or I'll spill your secret. Percy immediately blushed and fell silent. The rest of the people looked at each other, eager to know what the secret was, which made Percy, who had always been rigid, give in. In this regard, Percy could only use his brother's dignity and drive them away one by one. Now, Ginny's side is peaceful. But she was still unhappy. She was hesitating whether to tell Dumbledore about the diary. However, if her mother found out, the diary might be destroyed. But the diary falling into the wrong hands is also not a good thing. Not long after, Ron, Harry, and Hermione sneaked around again. Listen to me, Ginny, what exactly are you missing? Harry looked at her seriously. If this is really important, you can tell us and we can help you. Yes, Ron and Hermione also nodded vigorously. But Ginny still hesitated to speak. You don't trust us. Ron was a little impatient. I can't believe it, Ginny. We can say that we share will and woe. You forgot how we drank such a nasty polyjuice potion to investigate Malfoy, sighed Ginny. We broke almost several laws together. Hundreds of school rules. Still, you don't believe in us. Ginny wanted to say that the person acting with them was actually Mr. Riddle, but from another perspective, at least the three of them were indeed trustworthy. Please, Ginny. We need your help. If we can't find the real heir, Harry will always be wronged, and we don't want to see him enter Azkaban unjustly. With the pairs of eyes watching her, mainly Hermione and Harry, Ginny finally made up her mind. Hermione has a very smart mind and may really be able to help. If she had to find the diary by herself, there would be no way to start. Why, you must promise not to tell anyone. Ginny looked at them seriously. I promise. Ron was the first to blurt out, without seeming to be sincere at all. Swear first. The three little ones just looked at each other and made an oath, but it was not bound by any magic. Let's go to a place where no one is around first, Ginny said. In fact, there is no one in the common room now, but this place is too public. She took Harry and others to an abandoned secret room, and the three little wizards were stunned along the way. Hogwarts actually has a place like this. You can finally say it now, right? Ron put his hands on his hips. The stolen thing was a diary. Ginny finally said. Diary? But what about a diary? Harry and Hermione were both very puzzled. That diary is different, it's Mr. Riddle's diary. Riddle! Ron shouted, Tom Riddle! Chapter 43, Am I really a genius? Wait, stop. Wait a minute. Harry looked at Ron suspiciously, as if he was asking when the other person met another man behind his back, so you know this Tom Riddle? I should know. It's better to say that I will never forget this name until I die. Ron felt annoyed when he thought about it. Remember when we fought with Slytherin on the Quidditch pitch? That's when I cast a hex on Malfoy. To yourself, Hermione interrupted, reminding that the spell had backfired. It does not matter. Ron retorted. Then please tell me what's important. I was about to say that. Ron said, then Professor McGonagall sent me to work for Filch, and then I spent the whole night in the medal room polishing Tom Riddle's trophy. Moral Award, Outstanding Student Award, Special Contribution Award, especially this Special Contribution Award, it is a very big piece and I spent more than half an hour cleaning it. Fortunately, the reason for the award was not written on it, otherwise, I probably wouldn't have finished cleaning it till the next day. Harry and Hermione were still surprised at the coincidence, and Ginny said something else that surprised them. Mr. Riddle won the award because he caught the last person who opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago. What? The three people immediately stood up and looked at Ginny with wide eyes. They had never felt that they were so close to the truth at any time. Who was it? In the small secret room, the 3 breathing sounds suddenly became rapid. However, Ginny shook her head. Mr. Riddle didn't tell me. Hearing this, the 3 of them sat back on the dusty floor in frustration, but at this time, Harry caught the blind spot. Mr. Riddle didn't tell you? What do you mean he didn't tell you? Because the diary has thoughts, Mr. Riddle put his memories in the diary. I have been communicating with him since last semester. Later, after the Chamber of Secrets was opened again, he said that he would search and find the culprit again. And now the diary has been stolen. Mr. Riddle must have discovered something, so he was targeted by the heir. Ginny started to cry as she spoke. Hermione believed that she had been surprised by enough things till now, and no matter what she heard from Ginny, she would not be more surprised. But now she knows she was wrong. Ron's face was full of surprise and fear. You, how dare you talk to a thinking thing? What if it curses you? Mr. Riddle doesn't do that. Ginny said angrily. She knew that others might not be willing to accept it after hearing about the diary. Mr. Riddle will not hurt me, he is my friend. He has helped me a lot, taught me spells, guided me in transformation and potions, and various undoings of spells. If it weren't for Mr. Riddle's help, you might still be spitting out slugs. Ron was immediately ashamed. Now, all 3 of them knew why Ginny was so good. But, it is still far from ordinary. If it were me, I would never believe it easily. Ron was still wary. Then tell me, do I look like I'm in danger? If Mr. Riddle wanted to harm me, he would have succeeded long ago. But he didn't. He even helped me with my homework. What? Ron and Hermione screamed at the same time, even with the same open-mouthed expression. He actually helped you with your homework. This is so crazy, this Riddle must not be a good person. How could he do this? This is Hermione. This is so crazy, he must really be a good guy. Why wasn't I the one who got this notebook? This was Ron. Ow! Hermione kicked him hard. Now, Harry was very clear about this. But who stole the diary? Do you have any idea? It must be someone else from Gryffindor House. And it's a girl. Ron said without hesitation, otherwise no one can enter the girls' dormitory. That's not necessarily true. Don't forget that you went to the Slytherin common room a few weeks ago. Hermione reminded them not to forget about the possibility of the polyjuice potion. But in this way, the number of people to suspect has greatly increased. Could it be Malfoy? But Malfoy is not the heir of Slytherin. Several people suddenly fell into a deadlock again. Harry felt a great deal of pain, like a fruit that was on the verge of ripening but suddenly disappeared. We were this close to finding the real heir. Cyrus was in agony. He also felt like a fruit that was about to ripen from his hard work but then suddenly disappeared. It took him so long to make Ginny Weasley completely trust him and gain a short period of freedom as a result. But now, the diary has fallen into the hands of another person. And he didn't even know who the person in front of him was. Could it be Dumbledore? Did he change his mind about training Harry and plan to destroy me directly? Just as he was struggling, a piece of text finally emerged. Show me your secret. Show the secret of my dick size? Cyrus just wants to sucker punch him twice. You'd better not let me know who you are, or you'll be dead. Of course, these were just angry words. No matter what, in order to be resurrected, he still had to be patient and bewitch the little wizard in front of him. First, we still need to confirm his identity. Who are you? On the other side, Malfoy immediately smiled when he saw the diary's response. Unexpectedly, I just wrote a secret word casually, and the secret of this diary was actually revealed. Am I really a genius? After a brief moment of self-indulgence, Malfoy immediately continued writing in his diary. My name is Draco Malfoy. My father told me that this diary could help me open the Chamber of Secrets. Is your master the last person to open the Chamber of Secrets? Tell me, where is he? I want him to serve me. Draco had forgotten Lucius's warning. He will soon be the heir of Slytherin, why does he need to grovel to others? Draco Malfoy. And was it Lucius who asked him to do this? Cyrus was stunned. Lucius, you big-browed man, it turns out you have betrayed the revolution too. Cyrus felt a little suffocated at the thought of being stabbed in the back after writing a letter to Lucius Malfoy. He had fired a shotgun on his front foot. Of course, he naturally believed that Lucius did not dare to openly betray Voldemort. At least at this stage, Lucius was still on the opposite side of Dumbledore. He must have misunderstood the letter I wrote in the past. so, it's me who shot myself in the foot. Forget it, it's the same if it's Malfoy, but I have to gain his trust quickly. Chapter 44, Causes and Consequences. Gaining Draco's trust was easier than imagined, and Cyrus knew that it was probably thanks to Lucius. This kid still admired his father very much. Since it was Lucius who told him that this diary could help him open the secret room, Draco naturally believed it. In the process of communicating with Draco, Cyrus finally understood the cause and effect. At that time, Cyrus turned into Draco and found the owl of the Malfoy family. The owl did not recognize that the Draco Malfoy in front of him was not the real one, so it flew to the Malfoy manor in Wiltshire with the letter. Cyrus was afraid that Lucius Malfoy would disobey his orders, so when he wrote the letter, he clearly hinted that Draco's fate was in his hands and asked Lucius to cooperate with him to bring Dumbledore to justice and be kicked out of school. As a result, when Lucius and Narcissa received the letter from their son, they immediately panicked, causing a misunderstanding. Time goes back to the days of Christmas. Wiltshire, Malfoy Manor. It's already Christmas, they should finally calm down. Narcissa's face was full of displeasure. This temperament destroyed her original beauty, and she looked like a person who was not so easy to converse with. But no one could blame her. The Ministry of Magic had been causing trouble for them this year, trying to find out the dark magic items hidden in the Malfoy family. Although Lucius has secretly dealt with the most difficult batch, the Malfoy family has not been a good gentleman in the wizarding world for so many years. Unless the entire manor is turned into an empty shell, there is no way to finish the deal. And about his beloved son, it was because of the continuous searches that Lucius decided to let Draco spend Christmas at school this year. Narcissa was naturally unhappy that she couldn't see her cute and great son after a hard-fought vacation. I've put pressure on the Daily Prophet and the Ministry of Magic. Fortunately, Arthur Weasley has a stupid son, and that Harry Potter. Naturally, Lucius would not let go of taking advantage of Weasley's son's blunders. Arthur Weasley, right? If you cause trouble for me, I won't make it easy for you. In fact, he started doing it during the summer vacation. He remembered a diary that Voldemort had given him for safekeeping. That diary looked like something from the Muggle world. If it hadn't been left by that person and asked him to keep it, he would have thrown it away as trash. Lucius remembered that he seemed to have asked the Dark Lord back then why he was destined to keep a notebook from the Muggle world. The answer given by the Dark Lord at that time was, the diary is the key to the secret chamber. If the Dark Lord was still alive, Lucius would never dare to hand over the diary, but now, he has disappeared for 11 years. In this case, why not use this diary to cause a little trouble for the Weasley family? So he mixed the diary with the Weasleys' belongings. After that, he did not let go of the flying car incident. Not only did he contact the newspaper to make the matter bigger, but he also paid to bribe some officials in the Ministry of Magic who were close to him, causing Arthur Weasley to fall into trouble. Now, the annoying endless search is finally over. Let me see, do you want to go to Hogwarts and bring Draco back? Narcissa said a little worriedly. Last time Draco wrote back, he already said that there was an attack in the school. I'm afraid the secret room has really been opened, and I am worried that he will be in danger if he stays in the school. Lucius pondered for a moment, then shook his head. The one who was attacked was just a mudblood. Draco will not be in danger. And I have written to him not to show his face too much. He knows very little about this matter, there will be no problem. It's not impossible to go all the way to bring Draco home, but Draco will also be the one to succeed the Malfoy family in the future, so he shouldn't be so pretentious. As the two of them were talking, they saw a flying shadow in the sky. It was the owl they bought for Draco. Didn't Draco send a letter? Narcissa eagerly took the letter from the owl and opened it. After a few seconds, her already pale face immediately became even paler. She covered her mouth in fear, her whole body seemed to be shaky. What's the matter? Lucius suddenly had a bad premonition, and quickly took the letter and checked it. My dear servant, Lucius Malfoy. I'm really sorry, Lucius. Did I disappear from other people's eyes for a while and you forget about my magic power? Otherwise, how dare you give away the things I asked you to keep? I think you probably think that the Dark Lord is dead, defeated by a baby who can't even walk, as countless people have said. You know me well, so you are eager to clear up the relationship, right? Lucius only read the first paragraph, his breathing became short, his whole body couldn't stop shaking, and he slowly said, he's back. He's back. Then he looked at the second part with fear. I have to admit that my current state is indeed not good, but it is still easy to kill a few people. Now, I need you to complete one thing to make up for the mistakes you made. Not too hard, just kick Dumbledore out of school. Also, wish you a Merry Christmas. There were only a few words in the letter, but it made Lucius and Narcissa look pale. Is it really him? It can't be him. Narcissa said in fear, he has disappeared for 11 years, how could he come back again? She was unwilling to accept the fact that her son was in danger at this moment. But Lucius knew very well that no one except Voldemort and himself knew about the diary. There is still a chance to atone for our sins. He immediately came out of his fear. Lucius understood Voldemort's character. If he did his task well enough, it would be possible to avoid punishment, and Draco would not be in danger. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. If Dumbledore can't find the culprit, then I can use the power of the school director to drive him out of Hogwarts. Lucius already had a plan in mind, but he still needed to convince the other school directors. The number of victims must be increased. How can only one mudblood be enough? Draco must do this. The Dark Lord is not dead yet. Only in this way will he praise Draco. Come here, Dobby. Dobby greets the master. A house elf with scars all over his body appeared in front of Lucius. He looked at Lucius Malfoy with fearful and tentative eyes. Lucius was too lazy to pay attention to why it had so many scars. Now, there was only one thing he wanted to do, and that was to complete the Dark Lord's mission and prevent Draco from encountering danger. Dobby, I want you to go to Hogwarts, find Ginny Weasley, steal a black diary, and give it to Draco. Then, give him this letter. Lucius wrote another letter. Chapter 45, Me. Can you really let me open the Chamber of Secrets? Malfoy's eyes were shining. His heart was as excited as exploding fireworks, the heir of Slytherin. This is simply an incredible honor. In Britain, all, or almost all pure-blood wizards admire Slytherin very much. This great wizard who eventually parted ways with the other three giants is their real idol. If he could inherit Slytherin's secrets, couldn't he become the second great wizard? At that time, just like his father said, Hogwarts must be purified. Those filthy mudbloods should be eliminated. Colin Creevey and Justin are just the beginning. I, Draco Malfoy, am the one who will inherit Slytherin's legacy. Wait. The fire in Malfoy's heart suddenly stagnated, and he suddenly thought, since he only got the diary now, who was the last person to have the diary? He was not referring to the successor 50 years ago, but the person who caused the two mudbloods to be petrified not long ago. He immediately asked Cyrus. Cyrus didn't want to tell Malfoy about Ginny, so he just replied, just a pathetic coward. Just because the professors became wary, he immediately started to be afraid. Otherwise, your father wouldn't have asked you to cooperate with me. Hearing this, Malfoy immediately felt that it made sense. You mean, my father thinks I am more reliable? Draco thought aloud and wrote excitedly, of course, I am Malfoy. It was easier than Ginny to deal with such a silly boy who was full of pretentiousness. Cyrus gave a slight hint and made Malfoy confused. Okay, let's take action immediately. Malfoy naturally did not want to be a coward like the previous owner, and he couldn't wait to see Hermione Granger become the next victim. No. Cyrus rejected him without hesitation. Now is not a good time, and I know you are not a coward, Draco. But it would be terrible if we were discovered. We need to get them to let their guard down first. However, I can take you to the secret chamber to take a look first. Draco was disappointed a second ago, but after seeing that he could go to the Chamber of Secrets, he immediately became excited again. I can't wait to appear in the center of the secret room in the next second and see that terrifying monster. How do we go there? I need to use your body. Cyrus came up with a plan. What? Do you think I will let you possess me? Malfoy immediately screamed. He knows the horror of dark magic items better than anyone else. Who knows what will happen if you let such a thing possess you? You do not dare. Cyrus smiled. Do you think I will harm you? Do you think your father would send something to you that might threaten your safety? Cyrus asked 3 consecutive questions, shattering all the doubts in Draco's heart. Okay, what to do? You don't have to do anything, you just put your face close to the diary. Draco immediately moved his face slowly towards the diary, and a silver mist began to appear in his vision like the thread spurted out by some kind of insect. The thread clung to his face, leading him into a dark abyss before he could react. When he raised his head again, the consciousness of this body already belonged to Cyrus. Finally, Cyrus first greedily absorbed a little bit of Draco's life energy and then planned to take Draco to the secret chamber for a look as agreed. Although he had gained Draco's trust, the level of trust was still much lower than that of Ginny. Ginny's trust in herself was so deep that she would make excuses for herself when problems arose. But the trust between Cyrus and Draco was easily broken. Under such circumstances, even possession cannot last very long. He still needed to gain Draco's trust further. But before that, he still needed to get something, the Marauder's map. After getting the Marauder's map from Fred and George, Cyrus hid it. At that time, he felt that the fewer people knew about the Marauder's map, the more useful it would be, so he did not tell anyone about the Marauder's map, not even Ginny. I didn't expect it to work now. After getting the Marauder's map, Cyrus folded it and hid it in Draco's sleeve. Then he turned and walked towards the bathroom of the Moaning Myrtle. The sink in the bathroom was opened at his command, and there was endless darkness in the secret passage. Draco Malfoy felt himself slowly opening his eyes in the darkness, and finally, a little light shone in. Although it is weak, I can see things at least. Then, the physical sensation slowly returned. He felt like he was lying in sticky mud, which made him feel very uncomfortable. But soon the fear of being in a completely unfamiliar place made him forget this little discomfort. There is a very high dome above the head, and it can be seen that this is a very huge space. The sides are carved with lifelike stone statues of snakes, each with a terrifying head rising from the black water. The secret room of Slytherin. The answer immediately popped into Draco's head. He quickly sat up from the ground, causing the diary that was originally flat on his chest to fall to the ground. Draco quickly picked up the diary. The pages of the book were open. "This is the secret room." Written on the page was this sentence. "Is the secret room inside the book?" Draco thought subconsciously. He thought that when he got close to the diary, he was pulled into the diary so that he could reach the secret room, and now he is inside the room. No wonder Dad said this diary is the key to the secret room. Now, the fear is gone. Draco perked up. He quickly stood up and looked at everything in the secret chamber. It was very empty, with almost nothing, but he felt like he was the real owner of this secret room. Where's the monster? What about the monster Slytherin raised that could destroy Mudbloods? He couldn't wait to write in his diary. You can't summon that monster. You must have Parseltongue to summon it. Otherwise, you will be attacked. Cyrus will not be led by Malfoy. He just showed him the secret chamber, it's not time to let him push further. Parseltongue? Harry Potter is a Parseltongue. Was it him before? Malfoy asked in disbelief. He didn't want to believe that the Saint Potter would be the successor of Slytherin. Of course not him. Who else but him? Who knows Parseltongue? Malfoy asked immediately. After a moment, he saw letters appear in the diary. Me. Chapter 46, Alchemy Towards the Root. Are you a Parselmouth? Malfoy's surprised tone was laced with jealousy. The name Tom Riddle sounds like a boring Mudblood, at best a half-blood. However, such a person actually possesses the ability he dreams of most. But soon, he was shocked by what Cyrus said next. Why, of course. My mother's surname is Gaunt, and I am a descendant of Slytherin. Who would have thought that this little Tom, who is unknown in the magical world, is actually a descendant of Slytherin? No wonder he can open the secret room. Draco was still annoyed though. Why didn't his ancestors have a wizard as great as Slytherin? In this way, Draco can also be a powerful heir to Hogwarts as a Malfoy heir. But forget it, anyway, now he himself has become the heir of the secret room, no matter what. The only thing that dissatisfied him was that this abominable Tom Riddle, even though he was a Parseltongue, didn't summon the monster for him to see. He really had no vision at all. Little diary, since you have Parseltongue, shouldn't you show it? Cyrus? Little diary, me, / This Draco Malfoy really doesn't know how to write the word death. Fortunately, the person in the diary is not the real Riddle, otherwise after being resurrected the first thing he would do. No, there would be no need to resurrect and Malfoy's life force would be drained directly. Of course I am willing, but the problem is that if I use Parselmouth, I have to borrow your body to make the sound. In this way, you will never see the appearance of the basilisk. Basilisk? It turns out that the monster in the Chamber of Secrets is a basilisk. Malfoy was surprised at first and then nodded as if it was a matter of course. The monster left behind by Slytherin should of course be the strongest Snake King. But, according to what Tom Riddle said, wouldn't he never be able to see the basilisk and never be able to control it? What kind of successor would he be? At most, Draco can only be regarded as Little Diary's vocal organ. Can't you summon it first and then return the body to me? If you have the courage and strength to face the basilisk alone, then I don't mind at all. But I need to remind you that without my control, it will attack you immediately. Please forgive me, after all, it has not been around for almost 1,000 years. What has it eaten till now? The rats in the sewer can't satisfy its appetite. Malfoy immediately shuddered. Then forget it. He sighed and looked around. There seemed to be nothing in the huge secret room except for a few statues. Is this Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets? It's a bit disappointing, to be honest. In fact, Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets cannot only contain these. Although the Chamber of Secrets was originally just a classroom built by Slytherin, it also left behind many precious manuscripts and secrets. Most of these have been absorbed by Voldemort and become nutrients to strengthen him. Now, they also belong to Cyrus Power. And there are many records of dangerous magical experiments. Some succeeded, but many more failed. Slytherin is said to be as ugly as a monkey. In fact, this is not his original appearance, just like Voldemort was also a handsome young man at the beginning. Both of them underwent magical experiments to transform themselves in pursuit of greater magical power. It can be said that Voldemort's experiment was largely based on Slytherin's experiment, but he still did not escape the disfigurement ending. Cyrus, who has absorbed the experience of these two, is actually very enthusiastic about the transformation of the magic blood, but he doesn't want to turn into an ugly monster yet, so he must be very careful in this step. It's too early to consider these things now. If I don't resurrect, I won't even have the capital to carry out the transformation. Sighing slightly, Cyrus knew that now was the time to make Draco trust him more. Are you thinking, what other secrets are there in this secret room? How do you know? Malfoy was startled by Cyrus's words. Could it be that this diary can also use legilimency? It's not hard to guess. If you want to become stronger, I have a good place for you to go. All you need is to lean your head over like you did at the beginning. Cyrus replied, and then turned the diary to another page. With his first experience, Malfoy was already familiar with the situation this time. After another shift in consciousness, Cyrus took out the Marauder's map and confirmed that there was no one outside the secret room and the corridor on the 8th floor before leaving and heading to the room of requirement. Give me a room to practice dark magic. Opening the door, an eerie classroom appeared in front of Cyrus. The classroom was almost filled with black magic books. There are some very advanced black magic among them. He hid most of the grimoires in after recording them in his dark space, leaving only a few simple hexes. There are actually quite a lot of these little evil curses for young wizards, so they won't affect their character too much, and at the same time, they can keep Malfoy busy, which is very suitable. Then, he returned his body again. Malfoy was naturally very happy when he saw so many jinxes, and he did not hesitate to praise Cyrus. Cyrus returned to the diary, analyzing those alchemy books and other forbidden books. Although he is now in Malfoy's hands, the actual situation has not changed much. The possibility of finally facing Dumbledore still exists. Cyrus felt that the more he read these alchemy books, the more he felt like he was immersed in an extremely terrifying quagmire. The vast world and boundless power are more mysterious than magic. Close to going to the true roots. Can the real Philosopher's Stone be refined only after completing the 22 paths? Or is it to gain more perfect, essential power? Cyrus's ambitions began to grow. What if it's just resurrection? The body after his resurrection will be of Tom Riddle. Although he is very talented, he still has limits after all. He made himself appear to be neither a human nor a ghost, but in the end, he failed to obtain the ultimate power. Cyrus didn't want to settle for less. Now that he has been exposed to so many mysteries, what he longs for is to become a truly perfect being. Chapter 47, The Legend of Draco. For a long time, Malfoy was immersed in the joy of learning curses. Cyrus didn't give him much guidance, but he still learned quickly. In addition to curses, Malfoy is also very interested in some alchemical gadgets. But this was something Lucius didn't want him to have access to when he was at home. Being addicted to alchemy tools is equivalent to playing with things and losing one's ambition. But in fact, Malfoy is quite talented in this area. After Cyrus discovered this by chance, he immediately took advantage and began to teach Malfoy about alchemy. Sometimes he would go to the hiding room to find some damaged alchemical items for Draco to repair. A broken pensieve was even found among them. As a result, they finally have a common secret. Malfoy also became more trusting of Cyrus. "If you want to continue studying alchemy, I suggest you choose runes in your third year," Cyrus suggested. Different from the ancient alchemy he is currently studying, modern alchemy is more focused on refining magic props, and is better at using runes to add magical power to props. The school hasn't mentioned course selection yet, but Malfoy is indeed considering it seriously. Ever since he stole the diary from Ginny, Dobby has been in a state of distress and confusion. He thought of so many ways to inform Harry Potter, but he never thought that the person whose name could not be mentioned was actually still alive. You know who had narrowly escaped death from Harry Potter 11 years ago. Now, I'm afraid Harry Potter will face an even more terrifying threat. The man who must not even be named is still alive. Harry Potter must leave Hogwarts. Dobby clenched his fist hard. At Hogwarts, Harry and others are still trying their best to help Ginny find Riddle's diary. But it has been several weeks and there are still no results at all. They looked at almost everyone as a culprit, and almost every Slytherin and Gryffindor student became a suspect. Ginny was very devastated and barely managed to sleep, but as time passed, she became sad and gave up. "I'm afraid we'll never be able to find that diary." Ron, like a pig, began to talk in frustration, "And have you noticed? The attacks seem to have stopped. It must have happened somewhere we don't know. Something happened. Maybe that Tom Riddle used his method to stop the successor." His words almost imply that the brave and righteous Mr. Riddle has died on the road to stop evil. So Ginny immediately started crying after hearing this. Not only did she cry, but she also hung Ron from the ceiling with an upside-down golden hook. Ron. In contrast, Fred and George, who thought Ginny had lost the map, were less anxious. On the one hand, they have figured out almost all the tunnels in the map, and at the same time, they also think that it is impossible for the successor to know the secrets of the map. The other party can never use the map to harm others. Even if he gets it, it is just a piece of waste paper. Now that the attacks have stopped, this is the best proof. So not only were they not worried, but they would come to comfort Ginny from time to time, but their comfort method was somewhat different. At least Percy didn't think of dressing up in fur or turning into bowls, jumping out from behind the statue to tease her. Such behavior can hardly be considered a kind of comfort. Soon, Harry had to stop looking for the thief. Because Wood has been training them like crazy recently, Harry stayed on the court almost all the time after dinner. The weather was still very cold and raining, which caused him to return every time. He felt like a drowned rat whenever he went to the dormitory. Ron was also very tired and always fell asleep. Worse than all of them was Lockhart. In order to ease the tension in the school, he organized a Valentine's Day event on his own initiative. Those little cupids with greeting cards, actually ugly dwarfs, would read out love letters written to you by others in public. The only thing that made Harry happy was that at least he didn't receive anything that might embarrass him. But Ron was very angry because Hermione could never unite with him in her attitude towards Lockhart. He suspected that one of the 40 or so Valentine's Day cards Lockhart had received belonged to Hermione. That Gilderoy Lockhart, I've never seen a worse man. Even Malfoy had almost had enough of Lockhart. My dad was really right. Dumbledore has completely suffered from Alzheimer's disease. Look at the defense against the dark arts professors he has been appointing for the past 2 years. The defense against dark arts professors are getting worse and worse every year. The last year's Professor Quirrell just stuttered like a dumb. And look at what have we got this year. This Lockhart should go to a drama club rather than teach us. If there was anything about Lockhart that made him happy, it was the fact that he always invited Harry Potter to perform with him in class. Almost every time, the annoying Scarhead plays a funny role, which can indeed add a lot of laughter to himself. But watching the same drama too much will make people feel bored. This time, there is another Valentine's Day drama. Draco Malfoy. Who doesn't know how popular he is in Slytherin? There must be some people wanting to express their feelings for him, right? But if someone confesses his love on this occasion, he would rather die. If someone dares to write me a greeting card and make me look embarrassed, I will teach her a lesson. Draco said immediately. This made Pansy Parkinson, who was sitting not far from him, immediately give up the idea. At noon, Malfoy complained to Cyrus about this matter again. He has almost regarded Cyrus as a real friend. He even takes care of the diary, like his own brother, and calls him very kindly. Sometimes Cyrus would remind him, I'm older than your father, and even he has to respect me. How can you refer to me as your younger brother? Draco always looked unconcerned. We all talk about our own affairs. He calls you master and I call you brother. Draco did not hesitate to give himself a super plus. But if Lucius knew that he called Voldemort his younger brother, sooner or later he would kneel in front of Draco and call him daddy. Cyrus didn't care about this. It was enough for him to be Draco's close friend. I think this Valentine's play of your professor might not be a bad thing, Cyrus said deliberately. You should take advantage of this opportunity. What do you mean? I mean, if you think this is a shameful thing, what about others? It seems to me that you hate that Harry Potter, right? Then why don't you try writing him a greeting card without a name? How about, his eyes were as green as freshly pickled toads. Then just enjoy the show of how the big celebrity is embarrassed in public. Cyrus had absolutely no consideration of the brief period when he and Harry collaborated to steal potions, and the deception was unambiguous. You are simply a genius. Malfoy jumped up. I'll write. No, I must write. I'll write just as you have said. To be honest, I have long hated his eyes. And he had a new idea. And have the dwarfs read it out in the potions class. He said proudly. But Cyrus slowly raised a question mark. You probably don't know that Professor Snape hates Harry Potter the most. Malfoy thinks that Cyrus doesn't understand the twists and turns, and immediately explains to him excitedly. If Professor Snape's class were interrupted by Potter, it is easy to imagine that Potter would be dead. In front of Snape, Harry's eyes will be called as green as freshly pickled toads. If he found out it was you, Draco Malfoy, it's not certain who will die. Don't you know that Snape hated every pore of Harry's body, except his eyes? You called Hermione a dirty word like mudblood and you cleaned the toilets for a semester. Now if you do this on Valentine's Day you can instead try to step on thunder directly. This Draco Malfoy and his stupid brain. What a legend. Chapter 48, Poor Potter. During Charms class in the afternoon, Malfoy implemented this plan. He also wanted to give Harry a show in Potions class, but unfortunately the last Potions class this week was yesterday. Throughout the class, Malfoy waited for the show. The black diary was placed in the upper left corner of the table. We will continue to leam the freezing spell today. Flitwick stood on the first base of books, otherwise his head would not be as high as the podium. But he was very enthusiastic. The spell of the freezing curse is Petrificus Totalis, pay attention to distinguish it from the other spell Locomotor Mortis. Of course you haven't learned it yet. Normally speaking, this freezing spell can only work on moving things, but... Hey, you! Harry Potter! A dwarf with a particularly gloomy face burst into the classroom and interrupted Professor Flitwick's lesson. The whole class raised their heads and looked at the dwarf who was about the same height as Professor Flitwick, and Harry immediately realized that he was going to be doomed. It was so irritating to receive a Valentine's Day card in front of so many people, especially Draco Malfoy among them. Harry wanted to run away. But he was still in class now. And several dwarfs had already gathered around him, crowding his table. Even Ron and Neville were squeezed out. Harry's gaze was cast out as if asking for help. He saw a look of fear and worry on Ron's face. Professor Flitwick on the podium covered his face helplessly, as if he was saying, I'm sorry Harry, but I can't help, you can only curse Lockhart. Across from him, the annoying Malfoy smiled happier than ever. I have a message to deliver to Harry Potter personally. The dwarf said, strumming the harp in an aggressive manner. Not here, Harry said in a low voice, almost begging. Stop! The dwarf muttered, grabbing Harry's bag to prevent him from escaping. Let me go! Harry shouted, tugging at his bag. He no longer cares whether he is in class or not, he would rather die than be humiliated here. With a loud tearing sound, his school bag was torn in half. His book, wand, parchment, and quill clattered to the floor, his inkstand shattering on top. Harry scrambled for things scattered on the ground, trying to pick them up before the dwarf started singing. The class was already in chaos, but Malfoy's voice pierced through the noise like a sharp bayonet, slashing at Harry. What's going on? Malfoy said in a cold and contemptuous tone. But he was much more excited inside than he let on. He has been waiting for this moment for a long time. He's laughing at me. Harry was completely panicked and just wanted to escape quickly, but the dwarf hugged his knees and made him fall heavily to the ground. There you go, he said, slumping down on Harry's lap, here's your singing Valentine's Day card. His eyes were as green as freshly pickled toads. His hair is as black and cool as a blackboard. The scar on his head is as magical as lightning. I wish he was mine, he's really handsome. He's Harry Scarhead. All right. Professor Flitwick finally couldn't stand it anymore. It was probably the first time that the students had seen the gentle Professor Flitwick so angry. I'm still in class. He picked up the wand and shot a magic spell. It did not hit the dwarf directly, but hit near its feet, leaving a hole as big as a fist on the ground, and drove the dwarf away. But Harry didn't feel any better at all. He was willing to hand over all the gold coins in Gringotts, just to turn into vapor and disappear on the spot. He bravely forced himself to laugh with everyone to bury the shame, but the one who laughed the most in the whole class was Malfoy. Laughing with Malfoy was even more torture for him. And the most important part is, this is not a confession at all, it's definitely Malfoy's fault. Harry swore, only he would call me Scarhead. What you said makes sense. Ron nodded, with regret on his face. How shameful, why didn't we think of such a good trick to tease Malfoy? Harry also felt it was a pity, but it was too late to say anything now. This class was their last class today, and this week, after class, Malfoy would return to the Slytherin common room. But Harry was still unwilling to give in. He was no longer interested in listening to the lecture, and looked at Malfoy with eyes full of hatred under his round lenses. Then, he saw Malfoy lying on the table as if he had encountered something good, and took out a black notebook and started writing. But the distance between the two of them was too far, and Harry couldn't see the specific content of Malfoy's writing. Haha, I don't think Potter liked your gift of Valentine's Day too much. This line of writing seeped into the diary and appeared in front of Cyrus. My gift to Harry Potter? Cyrus rolled his eyes. You are the one who loves Harry Potter the most, dude. He responded immediately. Well, the idea was mine but the gift was yours. I guess his expression must be wonderful. Completely correct. Through the words, Cyrus could feel Malfoy's extremely happy mood at this time. I'm afraid there's never a better moment in the world for him than right now. However, what Cyrus didn't know was that Harry was watching every move of the careless Malfoy. Fortunately, black books like this are all too common. So much so that even after Harry heard Ginny's description, he didn't have any doubts. After all, they had ruled out the option of Malfoy being a thief before. But in the final analysis, Malfoy can only make small fuss like this. The malice in his chest seems to be greater than anyone else's, but when put into practice, it may not be as powerful as he said. Are we really going to harm someone? In the secret room, Malfoy's voice began to tremble. In front of him was a tall humanoid figure, elegant and handsome, but his figure was still a little transparent, like a ghost. It's Cyrus. By absorbing the life force of Ginny and Malfoy some time ago, he was able to briefly let his shadow leave the diary. However, this would actually consume a lot of his energy. But friends always have to face each other. This is also a small preparation that Cyrus made to completely control Malfoy. I think we don't need to. Are you scared? Are you scared like the last coward? He asked. I'm not afraid, it's just... Draco's chest heaved violently. He looked at the big snake bowing in front of him in horror. What he felt at this moment was not glory, but real fear. But facing Cyrus, or in other words, facing Little Diary who had been with him for a long time, he was unwilling to show his unbearable side. Especially when he discovered that the half-blood Tom Riddle was simply much better than himself. Now, he really wants to show off himself in front of his friends and his father, so that they know how outstanding he is, but asking him to harm someone is a bit. She's just a dirty little mudblood, why do you care about her? Cyrus took a step forward. He was just an illusory shadow, but it forced Draco to keep retreating. I just don't think it's necessary. Aren't the first few people who were attacked not dead? Just let them petrify, let them petrify. How interesting, Draco. Cyrus chuckled. He had walked up to Draco unknowingly and looked at him condescendingly. He could feel Draco Malfoy's breathing, rapid and staccato. Do you know how much effort it takes for me to get out of the diary? It's far more difficult than possessing you. Cyrus said angrily, it's just because you said you wanted to do it yourself that I did this, but now, you are going to back down. I didn't, it's just... Cold sweat continued to flow down his forehead. Although Draco quickly denied it, he couldn't even make up an excuse if he really wanted to. He only felt a huge mass of seawater submerging him, and the water pressure made him breathless. He looked like he was in great pain. At this time, Cyrus' translucent fingers reached towards his chest and pinched the wand he kept in his pocket. He started to look at it slowly. Nice wand, what material is it made of? Cyrus seemed to have completely put aside the matter of asking Malfoy to harm people, and turned to talking about his wand. Hawthorn wood, the core of the staff is unicorn hair. Hawthorn, a strange, paradoxical wand, isn't it? It's like the tree itself is full of paradoxes, its leaves and flowers have healing properties, but its cutting smell of death. And unicorn hair. Nothing less suitable for dark magic. Draco. Cyrus put Malfoy's wand back into the distance and looked into his eyes. You look in pain. Draco had to admit that Tom Riddle was right. But he didn't want to admit it, or in other words, he couldn't say anything now. The friendly little diary in the past seemed to be a different person, making him feel both strange and scared. Fortunately, the other party finally relented. Neither your good nor evil is pure enough, and this is the source of your pain. Cyrus pointed out the opponent mercilessly. He put his hand on Draco's shoulder, and his voice gradually became ethereal, like the psychedelic mermaid's song in the sea. What you can't do, I'll do it. Draco Malfoy, give me your body. Chapter 49, Modifying Memory. Cyrus took advantage of Draco's weakness and took complete control of his body. But he did not immediately attack with the basilisk. He had more important things to do now than attack. Through the conversation with Draco, he already knew that the house elf Dobby stole the diary and delivered it to Draco. Now, Ginny still has the memory of the diary in her mind. If this memory is discovered by Dumbledore, then she may have nothing to hide. We must know whether Ginny revealed the diary and then changed all their memories. Cyrus has no plans to return to Ginny just yet. Now that things have developed to this point, there is actually no need to follow the plot of the original work. As long as there wasn't much difference in general, it would be enough to take Ginny into the secret room and create the illusion that she was going to face Harry Potter. Now, he must find an opportunity and act quickly. However, it was another thing to be disarmed by the Expelliarmus that Harry, Hermione, and Ginny jointly performed from the very beginning. A few minutes ago, Cyrus was about to go find Ginny. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked out of the common room door, he turned a corner and met 4 people who had been hiding there for a long time. 4 voices shouted Expelliarmus together, and Ron's wand returned fire and blew himself away. The remaining 3 magic spells flew towards Cyrus, knocking away the hawthorn stick in his hand. In fact, Cyrus is not really powerless. Even if the wand is knocked away, he can still cast magic, but now he has other ideas. Malfoy. Give Ginny's diary back. Hermione said rudely, threatening to give him a punch if he didn't hand over the diary. Hurry up. Or I will let you taste the taste of slugs. Ginny was even more irritable than Hermione. Don't try to quibble, Harry saw you taking out that diary during class. Ron, whose butt was broken into 8 pieces, quickly got up and stood aside with a fake domineering look. On Valentine's Day, Harry saw Malfoy writing something in a black notebook. He didn't pay much attention to it at the time, but after meeting Ginny, he remembered about the diary. After that, he observed for several days and finally determined that what Malfoy was holding was Ginny's lost diary. That's why this scene happened now. However, looking at the 3 wands pressed against his chin at this moment, Cyrus was not panicked at all. Wait, I'm not Malfoy. Cyrus looked at Ginny sincerely, then lowered his voice, it's me, Riddle. Mr. Riddle. Ginny immediately put down her wand and said in a surprised and happy voice, how are you possessing Malfoy? Oh, so, you are, Tom Riddle. Hermione and her 2 silly sons had strange expressions on their faces. It was Cyrus who was standing in Malfoy's face. No matter what he said, it made people laugh. They didn't think it was believable. That's right. Cyrus nodded, do you remember when we went to Snape to steal the ingredients for the compound potion? At that time, I was the one possessing Ginny. It's really you. Ron said in surprise, but how did you fall into Malfoy's hands? We all thought that the heir stole you away. Harry said doubtfully, Malfoy is not the heir, and he doesn't know who the heir is. Why did he steal you away? Because he wanted to help the heir, Cyrus explained. He didn't know who the heir was, but he found out that I was looking for the heir. He also found out that I was not Ginny, but a memory in the diary, so he found a way to steal the diary. But he didn't expect that I could forcibly control his body. Hearing this, Hermione immediately frowned, as if she thought Cyrus's method was too evil, but Harry and Ron were very happy. P.S. Somebody please remind Hermione about the shower lol. I have to say, although you still have the same face, you look much more pleasing to the eye than Malfoy. Ron walked up to him carelessly, put his arm around him, and then lowered his voice. I heard that you helped Ginny write her homework. Yeah, and there were a few times when I thought her level didn't require her to write those assignments. By the way, why are you asking? What's wrong? Cyrus said, pretending to not know Ron's inner thoughts. I mean, I have a lot of homework too. Ron. Hermione angrily pulled Ron away from Cyrus. Harry and Ginny were still surrounding him, and Ginny suddenly showed a sad expression. But if you had Malfoy under your control, why didn't you come to see me? Cyrus wanted to say that he had originally planned to find her and modify their memories. But when the words came to his lips, they changed into something else. That was too dangerous. I think the successor has discovered my existence. It's just that he hasn't noticed where I am hiding yet. If I come back to you, I may involve you in danger. And I'm using Malfoy's body, so don't worry, no one will think he's an enemy of the successor. I'm not afraid of danger. Ginny said firmly. We're not afraid either. Harry said immediately, hoping that Mr. Riddle could provide him with some useful information. Actually, I'm a little scared. Ron muttered slowly, but looking at his sister and his friends' expressions, he swallowed it back. I know you are all brave, but you can't find the culprit alone, right? Hermione interrupted, we can help. You have acted with us in the past days, you know we can help. Cyrus looked at her for a long time, then nodded, pretending to be helpless. Okay, I agree for you to join, but before that, I have to make it clear, Ginny, you didn't tell anyone else about the diary, right? No, I only told Hermione and the others. Very good, now I have to change your memory, erase this section of the diary, and replace it with another thing. Cyrus said, I know you will never agree to escape my secret, but the successor may use legilimency to find the answer from your memories. If he discovers my true identity, it will be too easy for him to destroy me. Cyrus took the wand back from Harry. You promise to only modify the memory about the diary, not to make us forget everything. Ginny looked at him stubbornly, fearing that this was just a lie told by Cyrus to make them forget everything and stay away from danger. I promise, only modifications. Chapter 50, Abandoned People. After modifying the memories of Ginny and the others, Cyrus finally felt that there would be no future trouble. Now, no one will know that his true identity is just an ordinary diary. Harry and others were in a daze for a moment, and then completely forgot about Cyrus modifying their memories. So, Mr. Riddle, have you found anything? Or do you know who opened the Chamber of Secrets last time? Harry was desperate to uncover secrets that would reveal the true heir's identity and clear his name of suspicion. Especially after he revealed his parcel tongue and Justin was petrified, almost everyone thought he was the culprit. Ginny said that when the secret room was opened 50 years ago, you were the one who caught the culprit. It was me indeed, but I'm afraid you guys won't want to believe it, Cyrus said tactfully. What does this mean? We need the truth, Mr. Riddle. We can't let the heir do evil anymore. We believe that there may be some connection between the person who opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago and the current one. Harry said anxiously. Well, if you want, I can show you, Cyrus replied. You don't have to listen to me. I can take you into my memory, into the night I caught him. But how? Find an empty classroom with no one around and wait for me there. Cyrus finally erased the diary from their memories, so naturally, he would not take it out in front of them. Coincidentally, he had previously found a broken pensieve in the room where things were hidden in the room of requirement, and he later repaired it. It was originally a gadget for Draco, but I didn't expect it to come in handy now. After getting the pensieve, Cyrus used the Marauder's map to determine the location of Harry and the others and rushed there immediately. How did you know we were here? Ron said in surprise when he saw Cyrus looking for him accurately, but soon he was attracted by the thing in Cyrus' hand. Do you want to wash your face? This is a pensieve. Hermione's eyes widened. What is a pensieve? It is an alchemical tool that can preserve the thoughts and memories in the mind, Cyrus explained while using the tip of the wand to draw out a small piece of silver memory at his temple. You can understand that the pensieve allows you and others to see the situation again in a third-person point of view. It's like watching a movie, understand? Cyrus dropped the memory into the pensieve and scrambled it. Soon the silver object became transparent and looked like glass. Follow me. Cyrus took the initiative to enter his own thoughts. He fell into a cold and dark material as if being sucked into a black vortex. What should we do? Ron hesitated as he watched Cyrus disappear. Follow me, Harry said without hesitation. Before he could say anything, Ginny had entered the pensieve, being the second one. Next came Harry, Hermione, and finally Ron. Before they could realize what was going on, they found themselves in a novel space. They immediately knew where they were. This round room with a sleeping portrait on the wall is Dumbledore's office, but the person sitting behind the desk is not Dumbledore at the moment, but a wizened wizard with a bald head who looked very weak. There were only a few strands of white hair on his head, and he was reading a letter by candlelight. Harry had never seen this man before. He is Professor Armando Dippet. 50 years ago, he was the principal of Hogwarts. Cyrus explained to them. He was talking loudly as usual, which made Harry and the others nervous. I'm sorry, Harry said with a trembling voice, shouldn't we keep it down and hide? But the wizard didn't even look up. He continued to read the letter, frowning slightly. Don't worry, they can't see us, they are just memories. Just like me. Cyrus explained. At this moment, Harry and the others felt relieved. At this time, the old wizard sighed, folded up the letter, stood up, walked past Harry, without even looking at him, and went straight over to open the curtains. The sky outside the window is covered with red clouds, it seems that it is sunset at this moment. The wizard returned to the table and sat down, twiddling his thumbs absent-mindedly and looking at the door. There was a knock on the door outside the office. Come in. The old wizard said in a weak voice. A boy of about 16 came in and took off his pointed hat. A silver prefect's badge gleamed on his chest. He looked exactly like Mr. Riddle, tall, with black hair and eyes. This person is me, Cyrus explained. In fact, others could tell without him having to say anything. He's much more handsome than that Lockhart. Ron nudged Hermione with his elbow, and Hermione's face immediately turned red. Ah, Riddle. The principal said. You wanted to see me, Professor Dippet? Riddle asked, looking a little nervous. Sit down, said Dippet, I have been reading the letter you gave me. Oh. Riddle said. He sat down and clasped his hands together. My dear child, Dippet said kindly, I cannot let you stay at school for the summer vacation. You'd love to go home for the holidays, right? No, Riddle said immediately, I would rather stay at Hogwarts than go to that. You lived in a Muggle orphanage during the holidays, right? Dippet asked curiously. Mr. Riddle, you never told me. Ginny looked at Cyrus with sympathy, sadness written all over her face. She never knew that Mr. Riddle had such a past. It's nothing. Cyrus just shook his head, I don't want others to think I'm pitiful, Ginny. This was what he said from the bottom of his heart. Useless sympathy is no comfort. Harry agreed with this more than anyone. He felt closer to Tom Riddle. The experiences of the two of them were so similar. They are almost like brothers who have been separated for 50 years. Yes, sir. Riddle said, blushing slightly. Are you a Muggle-born? Mixed blood, sir, Riddle said, my father is a Muggle and my mother is a wizard. Both your parents? My mother died just after giving birth to me, sir. They told me in the orphanage that she only had time to give me a name, Tom, after my father, and a middle name, Marvolo, after my grandfather. Dippet smacked his tongue sympathetically. The thing is, Tom, he sighed and said, we originally wanted to make some special arrangements for you, but under the current circumstances. Are you referring to all these attacks, sir? Riddle asked. Harry's heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and he leaned closer for fear of missing a word. That's true, said the principal, my dear boy, you must see how foolish it would be for me to allow you to stay in the castle after the term is over. Especially after the recent tragedy, of that poor little girl, you would have been much safer in the orphanage. To tell you the truth, the Ministry of Magic is even talking about closing schools. We don't have the slightest clue about who is responsible for these unfortunate events. Riddle's eyes widened. You're sad. Ginny said. I just don't want the school to be closed. So I have to hand over the culprit. Even if he didn't mean to commit evil, Cyrus said calmly. He was giving Harry and others a vaccination, so he deliberately emphasized, not on purpose. Harry could understand Riddle's thoughts in his memory. Hogwarts always provides the warmest shelter to those who are homeless. This was the first home and the best home he had ever known. He, Mr. Riddle, and other abandoned people found a home here. Chapter 51, The Inheritor. Let's say, if that man is caught, if everything stops. What do you mean? Dippet stood up from his chair as he spoke, his voice a bit harsh. Riddle, are you saying you know something about these attacks? No, sir. Riddle said quickly. Dippet sat back, looking slightly disappointed. You can go now, Tom. Riddle slid out of his chair and trudged out of the room. Several people followed. They descended the spiral staircase and emerged from the monstrous gargoyles in the darkening corridor. Riddle stopped and they stopped, all staring at him. Cyrus had a very strange feeling. Although he had watched this memory countless times, this was the first time that he had brought others to watch it. Especially since the owner of the memory looks exactly like him now. In the memory, Riddle was thinking seriously, biting his lip, and wrinkles appeared on his forehead. Then, he seemed to suddenly make up his mind and hurried away, followed quietly by several people. Along the way, they saw no one. Finally, they came to the foyer, where a tall wizard greeted Riddle on the marble stairs. What are you doing, Tom? Why are you still wandering around so late? It's Dumbledore. Ron stared at the wizard dumbfounded. He was none other than Dumbledore, who was 50 years younger. This is a very strange feeling, as if they are traveling in time. The grey world seems to be the color of time, and they are going upstream. I never thought I could meet such a young Dumbledore, Harry said dully. The Dumbledore of 50 years ago was different from the Dumbledore of today. At that time, he had long flowing auburn hair and a long beard, and his cheeks were not as old as they are now. However, perhaps due to the grey filter of this memory, Harry felt that he looked a little too sad, as if he had walked out of a wet rain. He didn't know what sad things Dumbledore had experienced at that time, but it seemed that the old man was already discouraged. What kept him alive was not hope, but more like punishment. Cyrus knew it very well. 50 years ago, at this time, Grindelwald was still carrying out their plans around the world, the vow they made until death as young boys, but they had already drifted apart. In a few years, people would be cheering for the day he lost his love. In this way, Harry and Dumbledore are also very similar. But Ginny remembered the night she met Dumbledore in her night out, and it seemed that there was no difference between it and now. Even if his appearance was somewhat different, the thing that remained unchanged about Dumbledore was his eyes that could see through people's hearts. I just had to see the headmaster, Professor. Riddle said. Okay, now please return to bed. Dumbledore said, staring at Riddle with the penetrating gaze that Harry was very familiar with. It's best not to wander in the corridors these days. Since it's already. He sighed heavily, said good night to Riddle, and strode away. Riddle watched him walk out of sight, then quickly walked up the stone steps leading to the underground classroom. However, Riddle did not lead them to a secret passage or a secret tunnel, but to the underground classroom where Snape took potion lessons. The torch was not lit, so when Riddle pushed the door almost shut, Harry could only see Riddle standing motionless in the doorway, staring at the passage outside. They stayed there for at least an hour. Cyrus could tell that Ron was getting a little impatient. Because they could only see Riddle's figure standing at the door, peeking out from the crack of the door, waiting like a sculpture. Don't worry, the person who opened the secret room was hiding here with the monsters he raised. Cyrus' words made them calm down. Just when their patience was about to run out, there was movement outside the door. Someone was walking quietly in the passage. They heard the man walking past the underground classroom where Riddle was hiding. Riddle was as silent as a shadow, sidled through the crack in the door, and followed. Cyrus led them over. They heard a door creak open and someone whisper in a husky voice. Come out, come up here, come to the box. Is this the heir? This person's voice seems a bit familiar. Hermione frowned and said. They saw the dark figure of a large boy squatting in front of an open door. There was a large box beside the door. Soon they knew why they felt familiar, especially after the dispute between Riddle and Hagrid in their memories. Good evening, Rubeus. Riddle said sternly. It's over, he said, I have to turn you in, Rubeus. They are discussing about closing Hogwarts if the attacks don't stop. I know you didn't mean to harm anyone. But monsters are not ideal pets. I guess you just let them out and move around, so. It definitely didn't harm anyone. The big boy said, taking a few steps back and leaning against the closed door. Harry could hear a strange rustling and clicking sound coming from behind him. Riddle moved closer. The parents of the dead girl will be here tomorrow. Hogwarts can at least ensure that the thing that killed their daughter is killed. No. It didn't kill anyone, the boy yelled, his voice echoing in the dim passage. It won't. And never will. Get out of the way. Riddle said, pulling out his wand. This move immediately made Harry and others nervous. They were looking forward to seeing a wonderful duel, but they were also worried about Riddle's safety. Riddle's spell illuminated the corridor with a sudden burst of fire. It also lit up the huge boy's face. It's Hagrid. The young wizards shouted in surprise, but they were unwilling to believe it was true. How could it be Hagrid? The memory did not stop because of their surprise. Riddle's spell knocked Hagrid into the opposite wall, popping open the door behind him. A huge, hairy, low body flew out so fast that it was almost hard to see what it looked like. Riddle raised his wand again, but it was too late. The creature fled, knocking him to the ground, then dashed down the corridor and disappeared. Ginny and Hermione were both frightened, but Cyrus knew that Riddle had deliberately let the acromantula escape. A person killed by an acromantula looks completely different from a person killed by a basilisk. Riddle stumbled to his feet and looked after it. He raised his wand, but Hagrid rushed at him, seized the wand, and knocked him to the ground again, shouting. No. Hagrid's rough voice shattered Riddle's memory. Cyrus stood in the dark space with several young wizards and fell into silence. They seemed to have not been able to get over the truth they just saw. After a long time, Hermione frowned and excused her friend. Mr. Riddle, could it be that you have found the wrong person? He may not mean it, but you also know that he has a soft spot for huge monsters, Cyrus said, trying his best to take Hagrid's good personality out of the conversation and focus their attention on the monsters. The monster escaped at that time, and now someone may have brought it back. But Harry opened his mouth. He wanted to defend Hagrid, but he knew that Cyrus was telling the truth. When they were at Hogwarts last year, Hagrid had tried to raise a fire dragon in his cabin, and the big three-headed dog he called Fluffy was something they couldn't forget for a long time. Back then, when Hagrid was still a teenager, if he heard that there was a monster hiding somewhere in the castle, Harry knew that he would definitely try his best to see it. Hagrid probably thought it was outrageous to keep the beast imprisoned for so long and that it should be given a chance to stretch its legs. Harry could even imagine 13-year-old Hagrid wanting to put a leash and collar on the beast and make it his pet. But Harry also believed that Hagrid would never intentionally kill anyone. I'm afraid that's the truth. Ron, do you still remember the fantastic beasts and where to find them you lent me? Ginny asked. The Ministry of Magic labels the most dangerous creatures, and there was your note or whatever Hagrid likes. Ron tried to change his perspective. You sound a lot like Percy, after all, who told you to tell on Hagrid? He grumbled. But the monster killed someone, Ron. Cyrus pretended to be helpless and said, I know Hagrid is your friend and he is a good person, so Dumbledore is willing to vouch for him. But he has some issues. Really? I can't just sit back and watch more attacks happen. The attacks have stopped since Hagrid was kicked out. If they close Hogwarts, then I'll be back in a Muggle orphanage. I'm sure you'll understand that I have a legitimate reason to want to be here. The original. Of course, Harry understood. Several people were silent. After a long silence, Hermione hesitantly asked the most difficult question, look, should we ask Hagrid about these things? Wow, then should we go to him and then simply ask him, said Ron. Hello, Hagrid, tell us, have you let any wild, furry things out of the castle recently? You think he'll tell us? So they decided not to say anything. Chapter 52, Casting Spells Without a Wand. The truth seems to have been revealed, but it has become another unspeakable secret. Ginny and the Golden Trio's hearts were heavy and they were a little out of breath. Except for Cyrus. He returned to the Slytherin common room, intending to find a solitary time to continue planning the attack. I remember that the fourth and fifth attacks happened almost at the same time, and it was because of these two attacks that the school was almost closed. Cyrus thought. It's not the time to close the school yet, it must be done step by step to make them think that the situation is not too serious, and it is best to let Dumbledore leave the school smoothly. At that time, it will be much more convenient. We still need to keep in touch with Lucius. Cyrus muttered to himself, sitting alone on the sofa in the common room and crossing his legs. After a while, a tall and strong man came over. From a distance, he looked like a huge green troll. Malfoy. Marcus Flint frowned. Why are you still here? Go to practice Quidditch. If we win the game with Ravenclaw, then we still have to play. Slytherin lost to Gryffindor in the Quidditch match last semester. At that time, they had the most advanced brooms and had an absolute advantage. However, Malfoy was too busy taunting Harry, forgetting that he was still competing, and missed the opportunity to get the golden snitch first. After that incident, Marcus Flint was very dissatisfied with Malfoy. But who doesn't know that Draco's father is the school director, and Slytherin's broom was donated by his family? Even if you are dissatisfied, you can only endure it. According to the schedule system, each house actually has to compete with the other 3 houses. The final victory is actually calculated based on the points scored during the game. They have lost a game with Gryffindor. If they beat Ravenclaw by 300 points, they still have a chance to enter the finals. In fact, their chances of winning are very high, and the gap between brooms is difficult to close. The problem is that since losing to Gryffindor, Draco Malfoy seems to have lost interest in Quidditch. Although he was still training, he was not devoted at all. Seeing the most important seeker in the team had this attitude, other players inevitably began to slack off. With such an attitude, it is really difficult to win. Therefore, when Marcus saw Malfoy doing nothing, he immediately asked him to go for practice. Malfoy. I made an exception by letting you be the seeker, not just to lose. He strode up to Cyrus, his angry face like a twisted gorilla. Because of you, everybody says that the quality of the team seeker is much lower than that of other teams. And we can't beat the other teams by more than 150 before the golden snitch appears, do you understand? If you still have this attitude, I will definitely kick you out of the team. Marcus became more and more agitated thinking of all those things as he spoke, and finally even stretched out his finger to poke Cyrus in the chest. This pissed off Cyrus. Slap. Cyrus coldly slapped Marcus' hand away. Don't point your fingers at me, Marcus Flint. Or do you want me to hang you from the ceiling? Not to mention that he doesn't like to be told what to do by others. Draco, the owner of this body, is still his close friend. How can he be bullied like this? How dare you humiliate me? Marcus's gorilla face immediately turned red. He felt humiliated. Ever since the incident at the duel club, everyone knew that he was literally hung up and beaten by a freshman, so he received a lot of ridicule. Of course, in response to this ridicule, he naturally used brute force to shut up those people. But now, the little Draco Malfoy actually dares to open up his wounds and pour salt on it. What about the Malfoys? Flint is also one of the 28 pureblood families. Looks like I'm going to teach you a lesson, Malfoy. He pulled out his wand angrily and said threateningly, I'll make your face full of pockmarks and make your teeth look worse than that mudblood from Gryffindor. You remember her name, right? Hearing this, Cyrus, who was a little angry previously, suddenly laughed. It turns out that these evil little Slytherins are nothing more than that. The most evil way they can think of is just to make people pockmarked. It's really funny. You know, just now Cyrus had planned to hang Marcus up first, then take off his pants and stuff his head into the toilet. Pfft. Then do as you say. What? Expelliarmus. Cyrus didn't even take out his wand, but directly shot out a red light with his bare hands, knocking down Marcus's wand. He casually took it and held the other person's wand in his hand. The wand is made of blackthorn wood, and the core doesn't look like unicorn hair. Cyrus flicked it slightly, and it felt much easier to use than Draco's awkward wand. He thought the core of the wand might be a dragon's heartstrings or the nerves of a fire dragon. Then, let's see how you look. Densagio. A curse immediately hit Marcus, and then his 2 front teeth began to grow crazily, turning his otherwise good gorilla face into a rabbit face. It's a pity he did not look as cute as a rabbit. The pain of teething surrounded Marcus. The protruding teeth stretched his mouth open, making it impossible for him to speak a word. All he could do was whimper. In the common room, other people had already discovered this scene. They looked panicked and rushed out to find Snape. Cyrus turned a blind eye, never taking such a skirmish to heart in the first place. Instead, he mercilessly released a magic spell towards Marcus again. This time, his face was like a blooming gypsophila, covered with dense black spots. Marcus was rolling on the ground in pain. I hope you can learn your lesson and be more respectful to me next time. Cyrus no longer looked at Marcus and found a comfortable position to sit down on the sofa. Also, I won't be participating in Quidditch training, but I will be there during the game. There is really no need to participate in Quidditch training. The Quidditch competition this semester will be cancelled because of him anyway, but he does plan to participate in the competition. Although he has no interest in Quidditch, if he doesn't participate, wouldn't Draco be kicked out of the team? He didn't want to make his close friend sad. Not long after, Snape arrived with a gloomy expression. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Marcus Flint rolling on the ground. The other little wizards were frightened and surrounded the culprit sitting on the sofa. Marcus Flint again? First, he was hung from the ceiling by a first-year student, and now he was beaten and rolled all over the floor by Malfoy. But Snape actually knew very well that although Marcus' grades were not very good, it was impossible to say that he was a waste. Ginny Weasley beat him because she had something wrong. But how could Draco Malfoy beat the other person like this? He knew how much Draco Malfoy was capable of. Snape had taken great care of him since he entered Hogwarts. The purpose is to repay the kindness he received from Lucius for helping him back then. Therefore, he knew better than anyone how much Draco weighed. At best, he is on the same level as Potter, or even a little bit worse. He can actually defeat Flint? He lowered his head and glanced at the embarrassed Marcus. After finding that the other man was fine, he immediately called 2 classmates to take him to Madame Pomfrey's office. Then he turned to question Cyrus. "Mr. Malfoy, what have you done this time?" "Nothing." Cyrus spread his hands and looked directly into Snape's eyes. "I was sitting on the sofa this morning, and then Flint came over and asked me to go to training. I asked him not to point fingers at me, and he just threatened to make my face pockmarked and my teeth to be as big as Miss Granger's. He was the one who threatened me first, Professor. That's why I hit him back in the same way. Using the Expelliarmus you taught us in the dueling club last time. Have you learned it?" Snape's tone contained a hint of surprise. He had only demonstrated the disarming spell once, but he didn't expect that someone actually learned it. Cyrus nodded. He didn't boast that he could cast spells without a wand. "Next time something like this happens, come to me directly." He obviously knew that Cyrus was not lying. "Even though I promised your father to take care of you, don't cause trouble for me or..." Hearing this, Cyrus immediately nodded obediently. Chapter 53, Bloody Hell. Failed again. Cyrus looked at the potion in the crucible that gradually turned from bright red to black, and he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. He couldn't remember how many times he had tried to refine the magic stone and failed. This does not include the number of failures he had simulated in his memory. I have strictly followed Flamel's notes and the 22 techniques summarized from other people's experiences, but the result is still a failure. What other secrets are there in the Jewish Book of Abraham? What variables existed when Nicholas Flamel was refining the Philosopher's Stone that even he didn't know about? What is the so-called essence? He only felt that a large number of mysteries were popping up in his mind one after another. My mind feels like it's going to explode. Cyrus knew that even if he continued to think about it now, he might not get the answer and it would just be a waste of time. When Cyrus waved his hand, everything in the room disappeared. Since there is no progress in alchemy for the time being, it is better to practice magic spells first. He took out the Book of the Red Dragon, the Book of Solomon, the Book of Roger Eyre, and the complete collection of Dark Curses, these banned books. The books are considered forbidden due to their powerful and terrifying curses as well as their obscure and complex nature which are not easy to understand. Fortunately, Cyrus's talent in this area is much better than that of alchemy. The Book of the Red Dragon records the method of resurrecting the dead, but after analysis, Cyrus discovered that this was actually just a method of creating inferi, and the resurrected dead could not be considered a true resurrection at all. How to refine the inferi? This is something that Voldemort already had in his memory. Although the method recorded in the Red Dragon book is different, perhaps the efficiency of refining the inferi is faster. But Cyrus really doesn't like the necromancer's approach. Moreover, the inferi do not actually have very strong combat effectiveness. They can serve as cannon fodder, but they are completely defenseless when faced with fire. And it just so happens that most of the powerful wizards in this world have powerful fire magic. For example, Dumbledore's Firestorm Charm, Cecil Lee's Vulcan, Grindelwald's Blue Fire Protego Diabolica, and even the relatively advanced version of Voldemort's Fiend Fire. Many others are also good at using powerful fire. Cyrus actually wanted to create his own flames, and coincidentally, the Book of Red Dragons recorded the devil flames of red dragons and the ice flames of white dragons. He planned to combine several kinds of magic with fierce fire, and the mention of a kind of hellfire in the Book of Solomon also made him excited. You can add protective spells, defensive spells, phantom transformations, and enemy trap spells into the flames. Grindelwald's fire shield is integrated with many spells. In fact, the power of this magic is not as terrifying as fiend fire, but it is more controllable and applicable. The power to destroy Paris is just incidental, and it is more important to identify his true believers. However, Cyrus said that he wanted it both in terms of power and efficacy. And even better. Inventing new magic is an interesting thing for Cyrus. Although failure is inevitable, this kind of failure is not a real failure. At most, it is just that the magic invented does not meet his expectations. Not a failure, just a stone on the way to success. It's like he tried to copy Grindelwald's fire shield first, but found that the most difficult thing was not to add those defensive spells to the flames, but to let them distinguish between ourselves and the enemy and only attack those who were not loyal enough to him. This complex magic is like a program, starting with if and then forming a fork. After the command given to the flame identifies the target through the if condition, it will show different characteristics. To the enemy, burn everything; to protect the believers, to defend against the attack. Now, Cyrus understood why the fire shield Protego Diabolica was not as powerful as fiend fire. The magic of this world is closely related to the wizard's emotions. Fiend fire is the craziest of all fire magic. It has no other use than burning and destroying, spreading and swallowing everything. This absolute destructive power and determination to destroy everything makes it so powerful. Fire shield protection is not such a magic. It is controlled. The power of protection contained in the magic has to make the caster's heart become more peaceful rather than crazy. Two different emotions must reach a balance. In this way, the power of the fire shield's body protection is naturally impossible to match that of fiend fire. But when it comes to letting Cyrus make his own choice, he still prefers Protego Diabolica. Not only because it looks more beautiful, but although there is some gap in the power of these two magics, it is enough if it's just used to destroy something. Bullets can accurately kill the enemy and leave hostages. There is no need to use nuclear weapons to kill the enemy and the hostages together. In the room of requirement, Cyrus held Flint's wand in his hand and slowly circled it like an elegant musician. Hot blue flames ignited around him, like a radiating wand. The anticyclone gradually spreads until it fills the entire interior space of the room of requirement. But when he walked in the flames, he didn't feel the heat or danger of the flames at all. Instead, he felt as happy as walking in the green wilderness. Protego Diabolica. The swaying flames are like clusters of bluebells swaying in the wind. Although Grindelwald's signature skills were reproduced, Cyrus was actually not very satisfied. He once again added many transformation spells to the flames, and demons with blue heads immediately emerged from the hell of bluebells. Then, he added 2 dragon fires from the Book of Red Dragons and the Hellfire and Fire Jade from the Book of Solomon to the flames. The color of the flame changed immediately. The originally beautiful blue flame seemed to be soaked in blood and became the color of death. The bluebells seemed to wither and wither. However, a bloody mandala bloomed on its corpse, paving a path of fire. In this way, a brand new fire magic was born in his hands. Many black spells and magic fires have increased the power of the flames, making up for the lack of the fire shield's power. Of course, this insufficiency can only be said to be relative. After all, it was a powerful spell that could destroy Paris. How could it really be insufficient in power? What if the curse of creating the Inferi is also integrated into it? Cyrus suddenly thought. Although he looks down on the Inferi, if the enemy sees his comrade swallowed by the flames stand up from the flames again, how will this situation affect the opponent's belief? Cyrus immediately opened the Book of Red Dragons and incorporated the spell for making the Inferi into it. In an instant, this terrifying spell finally took shape. Even Cyrus himself was struck by the evil of the curse. What a great spell! First, destroy the enemy, and then drive the enemy's corpse to fight with their original companions. Such cruel magic may even make Voldemort himself become Cyrus's #1 fan after seeing it. When Satan himself comes, he has to hand him some flowers. Cyrus suddenly had some resistance to this magic, or maybe it was a resistance to the evil hidden in his heart. But now that the curse has been invented, even if you don't plan to use it in the future, you should at least give it a name. I remember that in Bleach, Yamamoto Genri Usai Shigakuni's Zanpakuto seemed to have similar abilities. P.S. I haven't watched Bleach, so I DK what the author is talking about. After the swastika, the residual fire Taitonen fire 10 trillion's death burial formation is a move to recall the corpse of the deceased. However, this name is a bit too awkward to shout, so Cyrus plans to call it Bloody Hell. Chapter 54, The Fourth Attack and Conspiracy. Dumbledore didn't even have time to straighten his beard before he hurried towards the school infirmary. A few minutes ago, he met Professor McGonagall's patron saint, a silver tabby cat. Minerva, Phileas, how are you? From a distance, he saw a worried-looking McGonagall and an equally worried Flitwick standing at the door. Flitwick was only about half as tall as McGonagall. Lockhart was joining in the fun, and he simply couldn't stay out of focus for even a second. Same as before, petrified. McGonagall saw Dumbledore coming and immediately seemed to have found a backbone. The person who was attacked was Penelope Clearwater, a Ravenclaw student, a good student with both good character and academic performance plus a prefect of Ravenclaw. Percy Weasley found her in an empty classroom on the 4th floor this morning, McGonagall said. Dumbledore immediately walked into Madame Pomfrey's office, and several other professors quickly followed. Madame Pomfrey was bending down and taking something out of Penelope's hand. A small mirror. Dumbledore immediately guessed how Penelope had escaped from the basilisk. But he didn't know about the attack. After Cyrus noted that the portrait in the castle was Dumbledore's spy, he naturally refused to make the same mistake again. Instead of moving the basilisk through the corridors, he kept it inside the pipes and only let it out at the moment of attack. This is the fourth attack, Albus. 3 students were injured. McGonagall was full of worry. I'm afraid this matter can't be suppressed. What will the school board say? No response yet. Dumbledore shook his head. He originally thought that the school board might intend to close Hogwarts, but in fact, it did not. Maybe it's because no real murder has happened yet, or maybe someone thinks it's not the right time yet. That would be great, but we have to find the culprit. We will find it, Minerva, Dumbledore whispered. There was almost no expression on his face, making it difficult to see what he was really thinking. Yes, we will find it. As long as I do it myself. Lockhart found the right moment and jumped out immediately, showing his signature smile. McGonagall immediately showed a disgusted expression. To be honest, at other times, even if she didn't like Lockhart, she would never be so rude. But now that the situation is so serious, Lockhart thought it was child's play and it was annoying. After all, he is still the same Gilderoy Lockhart. It's the same Lockhart who, in order to attract attention, transformed the Death Eaters during the war years and launched his name into the air to create panic. If I remember correctly, you seem to have been trumpeting that the successor had been driven away by you 2 weeks ago. Snape appeared behind Lockhart at some point and sneered. Then, regardless of Lockhart's reaction, he came directly to Dumbledore and whispered, Ginny Weasley didn't go anywhere this morning. She stayed with Potter and the others. But there is something I must tell you. His voice dropped lower. In the end, he almost didn't speak but looked directly at Dumbledore. Ginny Weasley lost something? This information immediately made Dumbledore's mind clearer. After he noticed that Ginny had a problem before, he asked Snape to pay more attention to her. Now it seems that Voldemort was probably aware of this kind of surveillance, so he took the initiative to leave Ginny Weasley and maybe took control of the other little wizards. And that lost thing must be the Horcrux left by Voldemort. You've left too many holes, Tom. Dumbledore couldn't help but think. But the question is, what is that missing thing? Snape just shook his head. Legilimency is not an omniscient spell. The memories of Ginny and others have been modified by Cyrus. They can't remember anything that was lost in their minds. Naturally, Snape also knew that it was impossible to know the answer. Now it seems that the other party is still very cautious. Dumbledore held the mirror he took from Penelope and groaned. 50 years ago, Tom Riddle took Myrtle's life without hesitation, it was actually an accident, and now, from Miss Norris to Penelope, no one has truly died in the hands of the monster. The water in the bathroom, the camera, the ghost, and the mirror. Everything seemed to be just a coincidence, but he knew that there couldn't be such a coincidence in this world. The only possibility is that Tom doesn't want anyone to die. Naturally, Dumbledore would not think that Tom Riddle had repented and had grown compassion. The only explanation is that he didn't want the school to close. It was understandable to Dumbledore that he didn't want the school to close 50 years ago. But now, what is it that he desires? What is it about this school that attracts him? Dumbledore thought for a moment and came up with the answer. Harry Potter. That's right. If there was anything that interested him, Tom Riddle, it would probably be Harry Potter. When he, the Horcrux, would have used some method to learn from Ginny Weasley that Harry Potter had destroyed the man-you-know-who. The soul in the Horcrux, who knows nothing about this matter, must be wondering, what kind of magic power does a baby have that can defeat Lord Voldemort? He'll find the kid. The thought flashed through Dumbledore's mind. And as he thought about it, he became more and more certain that this would definitely happen. From the first attack, the other party has been blaming Harry as the attacker. On Halloween night, Harry, who happened to be absent from the dinner party, encountered the first attack. The second person attacked was Colin Creevey, who took many embarrassing photos of Harry. The third person was Justin, and Harry just happened to be caught in the act by Filch. All the evidence points to Harry. Tom Riddle must be trying to get Harry into trouble, trying to lead him to take the initiative to investigate the Chamber of Secrets and the successor. Only in this way can they finally meet alone. And this is exactly what Dumbledore wanted. He knows what I want. Dumbledore quickly understood that this was a game. Tom Riddle threatened him with the life of his student to eliminate himself as a threat and confront the little boy. If I guessed correctly, I'm afraid it won't be long before I have to leave Hogwarts because of some things. But Dumbledore wasn't actually too worried. Tom thought he could win because his opponent was just a second-year wizard. Chapter 55, You Are Quite Nice. Early the next morning, when news of Penelope Clearwater's attack spread throughout Hogwarts, the young wizards thought that Harry Potter must be crazy. At first he only attacked those who were against him, but now he has started to target all wizards from the Muggle world. Ernie Macmillan said matter-of-factly to everyone he knew. He almost believed that Harry was the culprit, and even fabricated the story of how Harry directed the monster to attack others. He also questioned why the professors didn't expel Harry. It's like he saw it with his own eyes. Ron rolled his eyes and defended Harry. I feel like almost all the rumors came from Ernie Macmillan. During the charms class, Cyrus deliberately got rid of Malfoy's 2 lackeys and came a little late. With no other seat, he could only sit behind Harry and Ron, in the same row as Hermione. He deliberately showed an expression of disgust on his face to make others think that he was not so willing. But secretly he was bickering with Hermione. Hermione blushed, remembering the Mr. Riddle she had seen in the Pensieve not long ago. Let me ask you, when did you start possessing Ginny? Hermione lowered her head and asked in a low voice with a blushing face. P.S. The bath. Ho ho. The first time she was possessed was not long after school started last year. After Colin Creevey was petrified during the Quidditch match last semester, and until Christmas, I was mostly in control. Why though, what happened? No, it's nothing. But Hermione's face was even redder than before. Cyrus could feel the heat even as he sat next to her. She changed the subject, poked Harry sitting in front of him with her quill, and threw a note over. What should we do? Maybe we should go find Hagrid and ask about this. But Hagrid has no way of knowing who opened the Chamber of Secrets this time, Harry replied reluctantly. Asking him to question Hagrid would be worse than killing him. He couldn't help but think back to the last time Justin was attacked. At that time, Professor Dumbledore took him to the principal's office, and Hagrid rushed in to speak for himself. Hagrid believes in me so much, but I'm doubting him. At least we can ask what the monster is in the Chamber of Secrets. Hermione said immediately. The other person who was as reluctant to go to Hagrid like Harry was Cyrus. You must know that his current identity is the Riddle who had framed Hagrid and got him punished. Although not many people know the truth of that year and Voldemort's true identity, maybe even Hagrid doesn't know. But if 2 people meet like this, it will never be a wonderful encounter. He had to stop Hermione. It's better to wait. He stretched out his hand to intercept the note. Maybe there are other ways. I believe the professors will not remain indifferent. Hagrid did not intentionally commit these crimes back then. We can't just ask him such questions. His scars are too cruel. Harry looked at Cyrus with emotion. Mr. Riddle, I didn't expect you to be such a nice person. Hermione still felt that this was not good, but, if someone is attacked again, we will go find Hagrid. Cyrus said forcefully, we'll ask everything clearly. What if someone is killed again? We have to go find Dumbledore. Fred and George had a rare disagreement. We must make everything clear. But this way our secret will be completely exposed, George said with a frown. There is no difference between being completely exposed now. Fred said, think about it, the heir stole the Marauder's map. Do you still expect that he will return it to us after using it? Now there is another victim, a prefect. Have you seen how frightened Percy has been in the past 2 days? We have to do something. George said nothing, but the scales in his heart began to tilt. Fred has a point. If the heir takes their map and attacks the little wizards in the castle and then escapes, then they are no different from accomplices. And the possibility of getting back the Marauder's map is almost zero. In this case, what does it matter whether the secret is exposed or not? Think about it, if the clues we provide are helpful, maybe we will be the heroes who catch the heir. Fred suddenly said, did you know that Ron and the others are also looking for the culprit? If we can be one step ahead, haha, Ron will definitely be furious if we catch the heir before them. Hearing this, George immediately smiled knowingly. Rather than becoming a hero, they were more happy to have their brother work hard for a long time but get nothing. I can already imagine his frustrated face. George touched Fred's shoulder, and the two of them walked towards Professor McGonagall's office in unison. Professor. Regarding the successor, we have important information that we want to report to Headmaster Dumbledore. Heir. Professor McGonagall's dignified face trembled a little. She stood up and looked seriously at the two troublemakers in front of her, George, Fred. I hope you understand that now is not the time to play pranks. We didn't, how could you think so? That's right, you won't find better behaved students at Hogwarts than us. The twins looked hurt. Since the first day you came to Hogwarts, there have been no rules you haven't broken. McGonagall's eyes widened, but she still led them towards the principal's office. Listen, if you dare to do anything funny about this, I'll write a letter and ask your mother to take you home to reflect for a semester. So no pranks. Do not worry. Absolutely we won't. McGonagall led them to the gargoyle statue and gave them the password. Today's password is Jelly Slug. Go up yourselves. She held both hands in front of her and looked seriously at the spiral elevator rising. George and Fred immediately took the elevator up and it was obvious that they were very excited. The elevator lifted the two of them up. After slowly opening, a spacious and beautiful circular room immediately appeared in front of them. The room was filled with all kinds of funny little noises. On the table with slender legs, there were many strange silverwares placed, spinning and spitting out small puffs of smoke. The walls are covered with portraits of old principals, both men and women, snoring gently in their respective frames. There was also a huge table in the room with claw-shaped legs. Dumbledore was lying on the table, raised his head, and looked at them in surprise. What advice do you two have? Fred and George had to take their attention away from the novel things in the headmaster's office. We have something important to report to you, about About the heir. Chapter 56, 7 Secret Paths. An important thing. Dumbledore looked even more surprised than before. He was sitting there thinking about what Ginny Weasley's lost thing could be, or what the Horcrux could be. Unexpectedly, two guests came. Do I have to say it now? We thought it would best to say it before the next attack happens. The twins shook their shoulders at the same time. This obviously piqued Dumbledore's interest, and according to the twins, it seemed to be related to the attacks. Perhaps the doubts that are bothering me at the moment will be solved soon. Please sit down, gentlemen. He stood up and poured them a cup of black tea himself. I think I can listen to you slowly describe what happened. It's best not to leave out any details. This matter has something to do with our sister. Headmaster, you may not know that there was a thief in her dormitory not too long ago. Something very important was lost. It's a magic item. Fred and George spoke looking at each other one by one. Oh, I had heard something like that had happened. Dumbledore said with a smile on his face, so, do you know what she lost? Who would have thought that a second ago, he was pondering over doubts that he had no clue about. Now the answer was delivered to him. That evil thing must be Horcrux. The secret Horcrux will be revealed soon. Dumbledore's eyes showed anticipation, but his expression did not change much. Of course, we know. In fact, it was ours. The twins said at the same time, but this made Dumbledore confused. Your stuff. When did they manage to get their hands on a Horcrux? It can't be considered ours, but we did discover its secret. He sat upright and emphasized again, please talk about it carefully. Don't leave any details. The twins had to start from the beginning again. So, when you were in first grade, you discovered a marauder's map. And you are saying that it could mark the location of everyone in the castle, right? Dumbledore finally figured out what the twins wanted to talk about. It was not the true identity of the Horcrux he imagined, but another magical item that could be called great. Moreover, this is indeed a very important piece of information. That's right. Even my name. Dumbledore confirmed. Everyone's name. Fred and George nodded in unison. Padfoot, Prongs, Moony, and Wormtail made them. They are great people. They are specially made for those of us who encourage and violate school rules for fun. It was such a great map. But now this map may have fallen into the hands of that successor. Yes, Ginny wanted to use the map to find the attacker, but not long after, her dormitory was searched and the map was stolen. Fred said, "We were worried that if the attacker used this map, he could do more attacks than previously. Or if he used it carefully, we won't be able to catch him," George added. "Your worries are very reasonable." Dumbledore agreed very much. "I am very happy that you are willing to share this important secret with me, an old man." His eyes flickered. After hearing what the twins said, he already knew who made the map. It's just that he didn't expect that the 4 Remus Lupin's group actually had such abilities. A magic item that even he was marked on. What would happen if Riddle got this map? He can confirm his location at all times to ensure that he can choose the right path and leave Hogwarts safely. Who can find him then? Let me confirm again, can the Marauder's map only mark the locations of people who are only inside the school? That's right, Fred replied. However, we also found that the map cannot mark every location in the castle. For example, the location of the secret room of Slytherin is not displayed on it. Obviously, those 4 who created Marauder's map had not found the location of the secret room. Hogwarts always has so many surprising secrets. Dumbledore smiled, then, "Can you please tell me? Now, what are some unknown secret passages someone could take if he wanted to roam freely or leave the castle?" "There are 7 in total. Filch knows 4 of them, but we think the attacker might not care about Filch," they said. "The remaining 3, one is behind the mirror on the 4th floor, and the other is behind the statue of the one-eyed old woman, leading directly to Honeyduk's cellar. We usually used these 2 when sneaking out before." "Hey, George! Don't say what we did." Fred patted George on the head. "Sorry, I spilled the beans. Don't worry, I won't punish you for this." Dumbledore laughed, "I think sometimes you have to take a little adventure to make life interesting enough, right?" "Yes, absolutely. I cannot agree more," the twins exclaimed exaggeratedly. "We don't think many people have used the last one. It's located next to the Whomping Willow. But if the successor is strong enough, he might not care much about the Whomping Willow. As long as he doesn't care about making a big noise," they said. Dumbledore knew this passage better than anyone else. He originally planted the Whomping Willow tree, and he prepared the passage under the Whomping Willow for a special student. The twins thought that there was a dangerous Whomping Willow guarding it, and that the heir to the Chamber of Secrets would never escape from there, but Dumbledore thought exactly the opposite. It would be easy for Riddle to kill the Whomping Willow, not to mention that it was not impossible for the majestic Dark Lord to not even know how to subdue the Whomping Willow. Just touching the scar of the Whomping Willow can silence the terrifying willow tree. I have to say that the information you provided me is really important. Perhaps it will be directly related to whether we can catch the culprit in the end." Dumbledore was not shy about his thanks. "Oh, don't mention it." The twins were also very happy that they could help. "In return, I think I can promise you that if I find the map, it will be returned to the school prankers, back to your hands. And I will keep this secret for you until you graduate." Dumbledore winked playfully. "Really? You are not pranking us, right? Ah, you can trust this old man." He gave them some chocolates and shooed them. After sending Fred and George away, the relief on Dumbledore's face immediately disappeared. He returned to his chair, bowed his head, and pondered. Which secret passage will you choose to leave? Or can you beat that boy? Chapter 57, I Am the Captain. There were no more attacks until March. Several mandrakes that had become taciturn became noisy again and held a lively and noisy dance party in the 3rd greenhouse, which made Professor Sprout very happy. It is estimated that in another month or 2, they will be fully mature. At that time, those who were petrified can finally wake up. Cyrus was also very happy. As time went by, resurrection seemed to be close at hand. The joy in his heart made his patron saint gradually take shape. It was not very clear, but he could still tell that it was a huge one. Related to flying birds. When the mandrake matures, I can steal a leaf, and after resurrection, I can try to transform into an animagus. Voldemort was not an animagus, and he looked down upon such useless moves. He didn't even pay attention to magical animals, let alone ordinary animals. But Cyrus had no such idea. An unregistered animagus was simply a symbol of freedom. In the early morning, Cyrus sat on the Slytherin seat, eating breakfast and reading the letter sent by Lucius Malfoy. During this period of time, he had been communicating with Lucius in Draco's name, and occasionally urged Lucius to act faster in the name of Riddle. However, the school governors of Hogwarts are no pushovers either. The prestige of those families is no less than that of the Malfoy family. What Cyrus needs is not something that can be accomplished quickly. Not to mention that Lucius had to find the right time to cooperate with Cyrus to put pressure on the Ministry of Magic so that they would be forced to send Hagrid to Azkaban for a few days. In fact, when Cyrus used Ginny's body to get along with Hagrid, he still liked the big guy, but in order to be resurrected, he could only give in to him. Azkaban is so great, the people there are so expletive, well-spoken, and everyone is very talented in dark magic. Cyrus convinced himself, while picking up a fork, forking a piece of sausage, and stuffing it into his mouth. What Azkaban? Why are you still sitting here? Isn't your Slytherin team playing against Ravenclaw today? Ginny couldn't help but see him sitting alone and eating slowly. So she ran over and asked. Originally she didn't care whether the Slytherin team won or lost, but it was different now. Mr. Riddle became Slytherin's seeker. Although the other people in Slytherin were very hateful, Ginny still wanted to see him play and to see if could win the game. Quidditch. Cyrus raised his eyebrows and then remembered another thing. Not long ago, Marcus Flint specifically asked him to train for this purpose. I simply forgot. He stood up. I wondered why there were so few people eating breakfast today. Although Cyrus is actually not very interested in Quidditch, it is rare for him to travel to this magical world and possess Draco. If he does not experience Quidditch, he is missing something. What's more, if he misses this time, he will probably not have another chance in the future. The main thing is the sense of experience. The two walked towards the Quidditch pitch, and most of the students were already seated. Many students also brought binoculars. The seats were literally raised into the air, but it was still difficult to see the action at times. Are you nervous? Ginny opened her mouth and asked in a low voice. Seeing so many spectators, even her heart seemed to be suspended. What's so stressful about this? Cyrus shook his head relaxedly. He had been dealing with more serious stuff. If he and Dumbledore were not careful in their affairs, he might die. All those petrifying attacks and learning dark stuff made him more nervous. Quidditch game? Just a little relaxation. They separated at the entrance, and Cyrus walked directly towards the Slytherin team's lounge. The game will be starting around 11 o'clock in the morning, but now, all the players are here, even the Seeker. Now, last year's Seeker, Terence Higgs, was looking at Draco with a surprised look on his face, as if he didn't expect him to appear here. He didn't even come to practice before. Ah! Immediately, surprise turned to fear. Malfoy, why are you? Terence Higgs was incoherent, and he couldn't help but tighten his hand holding the broom, sweat dripping from his palms. Marcus Flint, who is still the captain, seems very embarrassed. Since the last time Cyrus gave him a severe lesson in the Slytherin common room, not many wizards in Slytherin were willing to mess with Cyrus. After all, with his strength here and the protection of Professor Snape, he would not be punished for beating anyone. It was Marcus who said that you would no longer participate in Quidditch, so I. Terence stammered, and he did not hesitate to shift the responsibility to Marcus, but it's actually pretty much what he said. So Cyrus set his sights on Marcus. I had told you I would participate. Are you deaf or do you really have the mind of a troll? Cyrus said and pulled out the wand. The wand he was using was Marcus's, but now it belonged to him. Do you want me to treat your mind? Or do you prefer me to open your ears? Seeing him pick up the wand, all the members of the team took a step back in fear, shivering and hiding behind the slender broomsticks, as if the thin broom could hide their appearance. But you don't come to the training. Marcus could only say bravely. But I said I would come in the match. Cyrus took the broom from Terence's hand unceremoniously, it is what it is, Terence. I'll go first this time, and you can come next time. After giving the little snakes a little Dark Lord shock, Cyrus stopped teasing them. He completely deliberately wanted to create this unreasonable appearance of himself. If these little hooligans didn't know the pain, they wouldn't understand how powerful he was. Cyrus didn't want any more trouble. I just feel a little sorry for Terence Higgs, lol, he is a good young man, but unfortunately, the Nimbus 2001 in his hand has not warmed up yet, so he has to hand it over. Okay, now I'll take command. Cyrus's interest was extremely high. This is a bit like experiencing a roller coaster or bungee jumping. Although he is not that interested in Quidditch, it is still interesting to participate once in a while. And since he participated, he wanted to win. Wait, I'm the team's cap, Marcus shouted quickly, but before he could finish speaking, his mouth seemed to be mute and he couldn't pronounce a single syllable. Oskazi. Ha, not anymore. Cyrus said without looking back, I will lead you guys to victory. By the way, who is the seeker of the Ravenclaw team? Chapter 58, Harry has a crush. You're finally here, Ginny. Hermione stood up tall and waved to greet Ginny, who was belatedly arriving. They sat at the farthest end of the auditorium, where the view was the best. Although it was a bit far, they could still see the game clearly with the telescope kindly provided by Hagrid. You're too slow, Ginny. Ron muttered unhappily, why did you come this late? Oh, I was coming here with Mr. Riddle Malfoy. Ginny said as she sat down next to Hermione. He really forgot that today was the Quidditch match. I knew he didn't look like he was interested in Quidditch. Hermione said with an expected expression, he is much more interested in studying than Quidditch, and the books he reads are so complex, I can't even understand it, especially alchemy and runes, you two should learn from him. The latter sentence was addressed to Ron and Harry. Harry smiled awkwardly, and Ron immediately changed the subject. To be honest, I never dreamed that I would cheer for Slytherin in this life. If someone had told me this last year, I would have given him a slap to wake him up. But if Slytherin really won, Harry, you will have to face their Nimbus 2001 again. He said worriedly, having the urge to immediately boo Slytherin. What are you talking about? Mr. Riddle is our friend. Ginny was so angry that she spilled the beans by shouting his name. Fortunately, there were nearly 1,000 spectators, and almost 800 people were cheering for Ravenclaw with their voice rising a lot. Naturally, no one heard what they were saying. Harry was not worried at all and said, the possibility of winning is very small. Quidditch is not just good at broomstick. As far as I know, Malfoy doesn't seem to have participated in a single training, right? He must have gone rusty. I think he just wants to experience Quidditch after a long time, after all, it's hard to get the chance, so let's cheer him on. After hearing what he said, Ginny and Hermione began to worry that Cyrus would make a fool of himself. Don't worry, Ron saw their emotions. It's not impossible for someone of that team to fly worse than Malfoy. The four people laughed at the same time. In fact, Malfoy's flying skills are still very good, worse than Harry, but better than most people. It's just that the real Malfoy does not so much motivated to win as he is motivated to mock Harry on a daily basis. In the previous match his eyes were almost on Harry's body when he should have been looking for the golden snitch. Look, the people from the Ravenclaw team are coming out. Hermione said suddenly. Harry immediately stretched his neck and looked over there. He remembered that the seeker of the Ravenclaw team was a girl. He didn't think much of it last year, but the last few times he saw her, he found her more and more cute. How good is the Ravenclaw team? Hermione asked. She wasn't particularly keen on Quidditch and hadn't watched any other games besides Harry's games last year. Not bad among all the teams at Hogwarts. Harry said seriously, which can be said to be quite euphemistic. In fact, the overall strength of the Ravenclaw team is indeed worse than the others, but in fact the gap between the four teams is actually very small. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw have never been favorites to win the championship. If Slytherin doesn't secretly do something evil, there is still hope of winning. Harry said from Zhongchu's perspective, she is so cute, isn't she? Hey! Why are you saying Slytherin can't win? Don't forget who we are here to cheer for. Besides, if you like her so much, why didn't you confess your love to her on Valentine's Day? Ginny crossed Hermione and patted Harry's cheek. A tap on the back of his head brought him out of his dazed state. If I confessed to her at that time, then I would really have no hope. Harry complained, rubbing his head. He now felt a little nostalgic for the shy Ginny back in the summer. On the field, the captain of the Ravenclaw team, Roger Davis, captain of the Ravenclaw Quidditch team, was seriously saying to his subordinates, "Be careful, people in Slytherin tend to become hooligans when they play, so be careful." Injured. They also changed the broom this year. "I think we are hanging," Chaser Jeremy Stratton said in frustration, shaking his head. "Don't think so, at least we know that their seeker is terrible," Cho Chang said with a smile, "since Harry Potter can beat him, so can we. And we can win even more beautifully." "That's right." Roger nodded. "Chang, when the time comes, you will do your best to find the golden snitch. Jason and Duncan, your task is to protect Cho Chang and don't let Slytherin's people do something funny. Randolph, Jeremy, and we will attack with all our strength. There will definitely be more score points. Grant, guard the goal." "It sounds pretty easy," Jeremy said, trying to joke. "Come on, it will be easy, will it hurt to laugh, once," Jeremy said helplessly. "The Slytherin team members are also coming out." Someone said something. Everyone on the Ravenclaw team immediately looked into the distance, and sure enough they saw a row of green rapeseed flowers standing together. But what makes them strange is that Marcus Flint, who should have been in the leading position, is now standing at the end with his tail curled up. On the contrary, Malfoy, who had lost to Harry in the last competition, stood at the front. His white hair reflected in the sun, making him look like a bald man. "Malfoy! What's going on? Slytherin changed captain. Sure enough, you still need to bend your morally in face of money. If my father could replace all Ravenclaws with Nimbus 2001, would I also be able to be the captain?" Randolph said enviously. "Shut up." Roger wanted to hit him with a broom. But to be honest, if the other party can really get 7 Nimbus 2001, then it doesn't really matter if he gives up the captain's position. But gifting everyone with Nimbus 2001 is obviously impossible. In the face of a formidable enemy, there is no need to say more such boring nonsense. At this time, Madame Hooch was standing in the center of the court, with a whistle hanging around her neck and her right arm raised, signaling the two teams to move towards her. Roger was naturally very familiar with the process of Quidditch and led the team members through it. Cyrus on the other side also walked to Madame Hooch's side with his other team members. "Look, I want everyone to play fair and honestly." She seemed to be talking specifically to Marcus Flint, because when she discovered that Marcus was standing at the back of the team uncharacteristically, she gave him a very strange look. Then, she saw Marcus hinting towards someone and her eyes turned to Cyrus. The Malfoy brat. Well, to her it was still someone who needed to be warned. "I say it again, be fair and honest." "I'm the fairest," Cyrus said, raising his chin. "Very well, then everyone please ride on the broomstick." Cyrus steps into Malfoy's Nimbus 2001. Madame Hooch blew her silver whistle hard. Chapter 59, Malfoy, our king. The game begins. 15 broomsticks jumped out at once, and the Slytherin team was obviously much faster than Ravenclaw. However, speed is only one aspect, flexibility is the aspect that tests the true strength of a Quidditch player. Cyrus cheated at the beginning and cast a psychic spell on himself, so he could rely on magic to find the location of the golden snitch without using his eyes. Make sure that when it appears, you won't ignore it because of the blind spot in your field of vision. In fact, calling it cheating is not necessarily true. After all, the rules of Quidditch only emphasize that you cannot use wands, but they do not say that you cannot use magic. It's just that there are not many wizards who can cast spells without the help of a wand. Not to mention the more difficult spells like the super sensory charm. Once you open up God's vision, Quidditch becomes much easier. He flew directly to the top of the court, almost as if he was out of the game. The other Slytherin players took advantage of the 2001 broom and quickly launched a powerful attack. For the Ravenclaw team, if they want to win the game, they can only try to prevent Slytherin from scoring, and at the same time, catch the golden snitch before the score is opened by 150 points. Cho Chang's task was very difficult, as Adrian Pusey had already hit the quaffle into their frame first, scoring 10 points. Then Marcus also launched an attack. This time goalkeeper Grant did not fail and saved the quaffle, but Randolph failed to intercept Slytherin's third chaser Graham, and was defeated by the Slytherin team, gaining them another 10 points. The game was very tense, and the gap between the brooms made it difficult for Ravenclaw's chasers to grab the ball, which was always snatched away by the Marcus trio halfway through. Cho Chang was scurrying around in the air anxiously. She couldn't find the golden snitch because it hadn't appeared yet. Cho Chang raised her head and looked at Cyrus, who seemed a little leisurely in the sky at the moment and couldn't help but feel very annoyed. Why is he so relaxed? Is this guy here to compete? In her opinion, Cyrus at this moment seemed to be just showing off, not looking for the golden snitch at all. Did he think that before he caught the golden snitch and ended the game, the Slytherin team could lead the Ravenclaw team by 150 points? Isn't that too contemptuous? This is simply contempt for their Ravenclaw team. But soon, she decided that Cyrus should rather stay here in the sky and do as much sightseeing as he wanted, without moving. Facing Slytherin's fierce attack, Roger adopted another counterattack method, the Parkin Pliers tactic. He and Jeremy pressed Adrian together, approaching him from both wings to block his escape route, while Randolph lowered his body and rushed straight towards Adrian from the front, forcing him to give up the quaffle in his hand. 3 players blocking 1 player was very risky, as Slytherin's 2 remaining chasers would be left unguarded. But Roger had no other choice. If Ravenclaw didn't score again, the score gap between the 2 sides would get wider and wider. Now he could only place his hopes on the rest of the team, hoping that Keeper Grant could successfully hold the goal, or that 2 batters could intercept Slytherin's attack with bludgers. His 2 hitters were very powerful. Jason and Duncan directly played a double hit, which greatly enhanced the power of the bludger. The bludger flew out quickly and hit Graham, who originally wanted to come over to help Adrian. Graham quickly lowered his head, but the bludger did not pass through his head, but hit the tail of the broom. This made him lose his balance and fall to the ground like a rolling stone. This tense scene immediately attracted exclamations from the audience. Even if most people didn't like Slytherin's style, they couldn't help but worry about Graham's safety. If you fell from such a height, you would have to break at least a few ribs. If you were not careful, it would not be impossible to break your cervical spine and die on the spot. Even Jason and Duncan were a little worried. However, watching Graham hit his head on the ground, not many people reacted in horror. Madame Hooch, who was the referee, became a decorator as always. Only Dumbledore stood up from the high platform, silently raised his right hand, and recited half a spell. Arresto Momin. But before he could have cast the spell, a blur of green dashed down from the air, making Dumbledore pause, piercing the shrill and noisy screams. The incoming blur was Cyrus. Cyrus dived down at almost a straight angle, and the performance of Nimbus 2001 was brought to its maximum. In fact, even a series sweeping broom is fast enough to handle most games. No player has the ability to fly at full speed on a small court because they can't stop. For every upgrade of the flying broomstick, for Quidditch players, the improvement in speed is secondary. The optimization of acceleration, agility, braking ability, balance, etc. is what the players value most. But now, Cyrus is driving the final glory of the Nimbus series, increasing the speed to the extreme. Everyone only saw a green shadow that was too fast to be seen. Slytherin's green robe was pulled long behind, like a green snake shadow. To put it bluntly, he only had to blink his eyelids and he would immediately hit the solid ground of the playground at a speed of nearly 150 km per hour. When the time comes, he will, no, we should say Malfoy's body will turn into a delicious Malfoy cake. The wind blowing against his face was like a slap in the face, making his cheeks hurt. In the blink of an eye, Cyrus reached out and grabbed Graham's arm. He cast several shock-absorbing spells to prevent Graham's arm from being ripped off directly. At this time, his pupils were covered by green grass. The front end of the broom is almost touching the ground. About to hit. Cyrus gritted his teeth, grabbed the broom head hard with his other hand, and pulled it back as if pulling the joystick of an airplane, his whole body leaning back. Click! A crisp sound. The tip of Nimbus 2001 drew a mark on the ground, and the front end of the broom scratched directly. Swoosh! Then, Cyrus completed an extreme turn, and the flying broom, which had become shorter, soared into the sky again. He successfully saved Graham. The entire arena was silent for almost half a minute, as if someone had used magic to isolate everyone's voices. Did you see that? Wow! Hey! So cool! Then, there were cheers that echoed through the clouds. Even the Gryffindor wizards, who had always been at odds with Slytherin, went crazy. George and Fred put aside their prejudices and stepped on the heads of the 2 unknown little wizards in front of them, waving their arms and shouting. Malfoy, our king! Harry and Ron were stunned. I didn't know he could fly so well. He can definitely join the Quidditch team and win the World Championship. Ron said with admiration. World Champion. Wood came out of nowhere, his eyes shining. No. He can go down in history. What is a World Champion? If this were a cultivation novel, after showing today's stunt, Cyrus would be called a Quidditch immortal. Chapter 60, Accident and Victory. Malfoy, our king. Malfoy, our king. Malfoy, our king. Today will go down in history. The enthusiastic Quidditch fans were screaming, and Professor McGonagall almost fainted. This enthusiasm immediately infected many young wizards who were not so enthusiastic about Quidditch. Even Hermione thinks Cyrus is incredibly cool. If there was anything that made her feel a little regretful, it was that Cyrus was now using Malfoy's face. If it were Mr. Riddle himself, she would have wanted to write him a love letter on the spot. Compared to the excited audience, the players on the field were very quiet. Graham was covered in a cold sweat and thanked Cyrus with both fear and gratitude. "Thank you, Malfoy. Don't worry, it's time for us to fight back." Cyrus patted his shoulder hard, and the two of them rose at the same time. The now scratched broom was a little unbalanced, but it was no problem. Jason and Duncan flew over with apologetic expressions. "Sorry, Graham." "Don't worry, you're not breaking the rules," Cyrus said before Graham could get angry. Hearing what he said, Graham was naturally embarrassed to lose his temper, but thought that he must show some color to Ravenclaw. After confirming that everything was okay, Madame Hooch breathed a sigh of relief and blew the silver whistle. The game continues. The 14 people on the field moved around again. This time, Cyrus did not continue to watch. He was quite bored staying in the sky. At this moment, he held the broken gap of the broom handle with both hands and changed the direction of the broom's flight by a small amount. He is only a seeker and cannot score points through the quaffle, but the rules of Quidditch do not mention that seekers cannot compete for the quaffle. It's just that this scene is simply not possible in other games. There is no seeker who does not look for the golden snitch and follows the quaffle everywhere. Unless he doesn't want to win. Cyrus saw that Randolph had snatched the quaffle from Adrian. He immediately rushed out and approached the opponent from the left. Cho Chang thought he had discovered the traces of the golden snitch, and followed him without hesitation. The seeker always has a blind spot in his field of vision. Sometimes the seeker cannot spot the snitch, so she must always pay attention to his opponent's every move. Therefore, when she noticed Cyrus starting to move, she rushed over with Cyrus without hesitation. Cyrus noticed her immediately. Cho Chang in real life is much cuter than Cho Chang in the movie, and now Cyrus can understand why Harry is fascinated by her. This is indeed a cute little girl with delicate skin, a small nose, and almond-sized eyes like sparkling black lakes under the sun. She has the gentleness and elegance of an Oriental, but her personality is not as weak as she looks. After discovering Cyrus's actions, she immediately lowered her body and rushed over, intending to hit Cyrus's shoulder with her shoulder in an attempt to knock Cyrus away from his original flight path. But she didn't get it. Cyrus, who had turned on the supersensory spell, could feel the changes in the airflow behind him and the sound of the opponent breaking through the air as he flew without even using his eyes. Therefore, at the moment when Cho Chang was about to hit him, Cyrus was hung upside down and his body fell down. He seemed to be Cho's reflection in the mirror in the sky. The two were close to each other. This way of flying is unheard of. But Cho Chang had no time to care about anything else. She looked forward eagerly, looking for the golden shadow, but all she saw was nothing. "Where's the golden snitch?" "The golden snitch? Who told you that the snitch was here?" The upside-down Cyrus said strangely. "She is asking about the golden snitch. Has it appeared? Has my supersensory spell failed?" He actually didn't even notice the golden snitch appeared. "There is no snitch, why did you suddenly speed up and fly this way?" Cho Chang shouted in frustration. She was nervous for a long time, but she didn't expect that it was just a fake move by the other party. "No one stipulates that you can't fly around here." Cyrus curled his lips. He already understood why Cho suddenly surrounded him. "I just intend to interfere with your chaser's attack." These words made her very angry. Cyrus' behavior is certainly not a foul, but if the opponent's seeker doesn't focus on the snitch, isn't this just looking down on himself and thinking that he can't find the golden snitch? She lowered her head and glared at Cyrus angrily with her bright black eyes. But despite being angry, she couldn't help but admire Cyrus's flying skills. Even he had to admit that Cyrus' performance in this game was amazing. Whether it was the extreme slalom just now or the current upside-down flight, he was completely different from Malfoy in the last game. Of course, he is indeed Cyrus and not Malfoy. She was very curious about how much rigorous training Malfoy had undergone during this period of time to achieve such success. She couldn't help but feel ashamed that she had underestimated the opponent before going on the court. Now, she even admires him a little. With Malfoy's current flying ability, it would not be surprising if he could become a world-famous Quidditch star in time. Maybe I should ask him for an autograph after the game? Cho Chang shook her head. She has a lot of thoughts, but the most important thing now is the game itself. Cyrus' shadow-like flying style made her feel very uncomfortable. Although there was almost no contact between the two, Cho Chang felt like she was being restrained. She immediately pulled up the broom handle and broke away from the scene. At this time, the score gap between the two teams has become wider and wider. The Slytherin team scored again. Lee Jordan shouted hard, the current score is 90-20, and the Slytherin team leads by 70 points, 80 points. Marcus Flint another goal scored. I didn't expect Slytherin to still have some strength when they are acting righteously and don't foul. It seems that Mr. Malfoy's generous broom really helped them a lot. Lee Jordan. McGonagall roared dissatisfied. Lee immediately stopped pulling Slytherin and continued to explain, as you can see, Cho Chang escaped from Malfoy's upside-down flight. This flying method put a lot of pressure on her. It was really wonderful, but Malfoy kept flying upside down. Aren't you feeling dizzy? Can Cho Chang catch the golden snitch before the score between the two sides is stretched by more than 150 points? The golden snitch hasn't appeared yet, it has appeared. Malfoy is behind it. They are flying upward, and Cho Chang and the players followed. Lee suddenly raised everyone's hearts. On the field, the green shadow flew up into the sky like a rocket, and everyone couldn't help but raise their heads. A bright light and shadow instantly made them dizzy. The sun's rays are too dazzling. Is there really a golden snitch? Hermione and Ron looked up and saw nothing due to the sun. Only Harry squinted his eyes and saw a dark shadow that seemed to be shaking in the distance. Although he couldn't see clearly, he was sure that it was the snitch. This is incredible. If we hadn't seen him flying over, who wouldn't have discovered where the snitch was? He exclaimed, he will become the greatest seeker in the world. He won't. Ginny shook her head, Mr. Riddle won't regard Quidditch as his career, Harry. It doesn't mean much to him. Harry didn't quite understand this. Career. Such a word is still too far away for him. But Harry didn't understand how Quidditch could be meaningless. He felt that Quidditch was almost the most interesting thing in the world. Moreover, what he is best at is Quidditch. From Quidditch, Harry can feel the value of his existence. I can understand the joy of people cheering for me. This is different from people calling him the boy who lived and thinking he killed you-know-who. That kind of praise was something he couldn't accept with peace of mind. He had no idea what happened that night, not to mention that both his parents were killed that night. This was never a pleasant thing for him. He was in a trance for a moment, and then he was awakened by the exclamation. Everyone looked nervous. What's wrong? Ginny and Hermione were too anxious to speak, and Ron nervously held Harry's forearm. There's something wrong with the broom. What? Harry quickly took the telescope from Hermione's hand. Through the lens, he saw the broom in Cyrus's hand shaking violently, as if it was about to fall apart. It must have become like this due to the rescue just now. The front of his broom broke down a little when it was flying, and to be honest, it's a miracle that it can still fly. He has to stop. Hermione was so panicked that her entire face lost all color. Stop? You are mistaken. He is still accelerating. Ron seemed to have seen a ghost. He is simply crazy. If the broom falls apart at that height, he will fall to his death. Hearing these words, Ginny almost fainted. We have to stop the game. Hermione stood up and ran towards Dumbledore. But there were so many little wizards that everyone stood up and blocked the road. She's afraid the broom won't hold up even before she leaves the Gryffindor position. Of course, Cyrus knows his situation better than anyone else. The malfunction of the flying broom cannot be easily solved with a repair spell. Even if it could be done, Cyrus would not be able to cast such a spell beyond Malfoy's level in full view of the public. But giving up the game because of this. The desire to win in Cyrus's heart was not allowing that. Wouldn't it be ridiculous if he lost to a little girl? And in fact, the broom may not be able to hold it. Even if it really can't hold it, there is nothing to be afraid of. First of all, it was impossible for Dumbledore to watch the school director's son fall and get injured. Secondly, even if the old man was indifferent, Cyrus himself had many ways to save his life. Although the flying spell is inconvenient to use, if you reduce the shock and adjust your landing posture, you will only break one hand at most. In the magic world, breaking a hand is no different from scratching a piece of skin. Besides, it's not him who hurts. Therefore, although he realized that the broom could no longer hold on, he still accelerated. Faster. In Cyrus' pupils, the shadow of the snitch became increasingly clear. It seemed like he just had to reach out and get it. He stretched out his hand and jumped forward, but his fingertips missed the snitch. The hands are too short. He had forgotten that this body belonged to Draco Malfoy. And because of this small movement, the broom he was riding on completely lost its balance, shaking violently and crazily like a fierce horse. Cyrus cast several spells to make himself feel less bumpy. But when he exerted force with his right foot, he accidentally broke the pedal of the broom. Half of the metal pedal fell off and almost hit Cho Chang, who was chasing after him. "You have to slow down, Malfoy!" Cho shouted with all her strength. The broomstick Cyrus was riding was scary just to look at. After one of the pedals fell off, even the broom hair on his tail began to loosen. Cyrus turned a deaf ear. "Malfoy, stop it!" The two people rushed all the way into a huge cloud. Even the damaged Nimbus 2001 was not a match. The speed of the old antique in Cho Chang's hand was still behind. She failed to catch up with Cyrus and lost him in the clouds. "He's crazy." Nearly 1,000 teachers and students raised their heads and looked nervously at the sky, but there was nothing there except the dazzling sunshine and thick clouds. Then the clouds broke. A black shadow fell down. Dumbledore saw it clearly. It was Malfoy. It can be said that Malfoy's performance today was beyond his expectations. It was so outstanding. It's simply excellent to the point of being abnormal. Is this still Malfoy? But Dumbledore did not suspect that Malfoy was the one who stole the Horcrux and was controlled by Tom Riddle. Because he knew Tom so well. Tom would never be too ostentatious without ensuring his own safety. And Tom Riddle couldn't have saved anyone. Truth's action in rescuing Graham completely cleared him of suspicion. The Dark Lord only takes other people's lives, so how can he possibly save others? Looking at the rapidly falling figure, Dumbledore raised his arms again. Arresto momentum. Cyrus felt as if there was a soft force on his back lifting him up. He seemed to be hitting the wool mat layer by layer, and his falling speed became slower and slower. He knew immediately that it was Dumbledore who had taken action. So he just didn't care about anything and let himself hit the ground. Madame Hooch blew the silver whistle and swooped down. Cyrus immediately took out the golden snitch in his hand. After giving up, he was carried into the school doctor's office by a large group of people cheering. It was as if they were celebrating that Cyrus was going to be hospitalized, but they were cheering because he was safe and he had indeed snatched the snitch.
Thanks for listening.